here, and hopefully got it going now. What we're presenting today is just an update on where we're at with the preferred alternative study and what's going on with the consulting and where our next steps are from here. So at this point in time, the consultants have come out with a preferred alternative, which we're going to cover and go over in the presentation, or Ann will cover in the presentation. We're here to get an update on that. We don't do any voting or any kind of public input scenario right now. That all comes a little bit later, but this is just an update on where we're at with our consultants. Also give you an update on the feedback that we received from the open house the other night. Many of you were there, so it might be just a rehashing of those elements. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Ann Sylvester to get us kick-started on the presentation. Ann, you and Keith, I don't know how you guys want to break it up. I'm here too, so I try to answer questions as they may arise. But mostly this is our opportunity to kind of go through where we're at, kind of provide you some information and keep you apprised of what's been happening throughout this planning process.
So Keith, would you like to do the introductory remarks just about schedule, context, and all that, and then I'll get into the meat of the presentation.
Okay. So as you folks know, we have been working on this alternatives analysis for a little while, and it's to be considered as we go forward with the Kingston Terrace master plan. We have a schedule now. I believe that we're a draft of the Kingston Terrace master plan will be ready around Thanksgiving time. And this will be a key element that is considered as we go forward with determining what the Kingston Terrace master plan should look like. So we're obviously in fall 22. And then late this winter and into next year, we'll be talking about the master plan adoption process and have formal hearings. So like Mike said, this is really just to give you folks an update on where we are. It's really not and have questions and answer time, but it's not really to have a discussion about which alternative folks might like or favor or anything like that. That'll come later when we have the public hearings. I think that's really all I have. Ann, why don't you take off?
Okay, well, the evaluation process that Keith was alluding to, focusing in on the road and street system, that's the study that we're going to be talking about tonight. We are looking to identify key multimodal corridors, and multimodal really is a key to this, and whether they a particular street carries all travel modes, or whether we're looking at a trail alignment or separation of pathways and streets. We're kind of open to a variety of different ways of providing multimodal service, but looking at what should be our key kind of backbone corridors, if you will, for the Kingston Terrace area. The evaluation factors that we look at are both qualitative and quantitative. They focus really on the differences among alternatives. So this is not an environmental document, although it has environmental elements in it. It's intended to just say, how does this one compare to this one? And to really flag the differences among the alternatives to help with the decision-making process. Some of the factors that we considered related to the land uses in the area and how the alternative might service these land uses, community design issues, active mobility, that being bicycles, pedestrians, micromobility, such as golf carts, scooters, things of that nature, vehicular mobility, referring more to cars, trucks, buses, things of that nature, then how public utilities and services might be implemented with respect to a particular alternative, whether it might make a good connection or a poorer connection, one compared to another, how they might affect natural resources that are in the area, and very broad planning level 10,000 foot cost and implementation considerations related to the alternatives. So what are we trying to achieve here? From the concept plan, there was a series of land uses and a very preliminary transportation network that was laid out. And what we're trying to do is to support that, to build on that, to modify that where it's necessary and appropriate to modify that, and to integrate Kingston Terrace with King City, to provide connections and access to parks, to transit, to emergency services, to just general commuting patterns, to personal business, to visiting neighbors, all of those sorts of things, and to try and avoid isolated development patterns with unconnected streets. Connectivity, particularly, is supportive of active transportation, bicycle and pedestrian connections. The shorter the travel distances, the more likely you're going to have that people will take their bikes to make trips, or even to walk to make trips, like to the park or to a school, things of that nature. So we want to have a good, solid, connected street system that will facilitate that. To spread out traffic on multiple routes as opposed to just one service route, to encourage shorter travel times, to reduce vehicle miles of travel, which has a strong effect on greenhouse gas emissions, to work with the topography that exists in the area. It's a challenging area to work with the ravines, and to avoid high-value natural resources to the extent possible, to provide convenient walking and biking routes, and to accommodate public utilities, which are usually positioned within public rights-of-way so that you can have access and maintain those utilities like water and sewer, things of that nature over time. One of the communications that we've had, we've been working closely with both Washington County and the city of Tigard through this master planning process, is they have stressed from the beginning that they would like to see a parallel route to Beef Bend connect through this area and link to the existing city. And this is kind of a quote from a letter we received from them. All of this is a quote, basically. Parallel connector roadway to Beef Bend Road is necessary for intra-city connectivity and mitigation of additional congestion and expected along the Beef Bend Road corridor. They acknowledge some of the challenges with increased traffic, particularly in an existing urban area. The right-of-way is very constrained at the east end of Beef Bend Road. And we took a look at that, just made some assumptions about if we were to widen the existing right-of-way by X number of feet, what would happen. And there's an awful lot of apartments and houses and developed land, residentially developed land that would be impacted, and probably significant right-of-way acquisition that would be necessary in order to actually make 5 lanes on Beef Bend Road in that area. So there's concern about that. And then having a parallel east-west road is important to providing a local alternative for Beef Bend Road for local trips. It's not really the intent that this serve regional trips. People that are cutting through the area would be discouraged to the extent possible, but that we're looking at servicing the trips Kingston Terrace to existing King City, and making that connection. So this is kind of the summary of the evaluation process here. I alluded a little bit to this. The factors were reviewed and approved by the SAC. We also shared them with the public. The analysis of each of these individual areas that I had listed previously was conducted by subject matter experts and their familiarity with the area and with their discipline. There's a planning level emphasis, using available information as a starting point. We didn't reinvent the wheel. For example, with the transportation analysis, we built on the analysis that had already been conducted for the transportation system plan and just took that one step farther and refined that in this particular area. We have revised some of the initial results to address concerns that were expressed to us by the SAC and the TAC and the public. Evaluation results are summarized in tables in the report that kind of give you a very short synopsis of how these alternatives compare with each other with respect to a specific factor. And there's kind of a bubble chart. You can see the bubbles up here about the solid bubble being the most positive or least negative, all the way down to the most negative or the least positive effect. And again, those alternatives are compared to each other. And so one alternative may be, significantly poorer than another alternative. And we're going to try and reflect that in the bubbles that are assigned. Sometimes some of the differences are more subtle, and yet one alternative actually performs better than another alternative. So we show that in the use of the bubbles. And again, analysis results are relative, and they're not absolute. We're comparing alternatives. This came from the concept plan. It was the initial street system that was laid out in that document when it was adopted. It shows that backbone route connecting over to Fisher Road and some other alignment routes, collectors and lower order streets. And this is actually a more refined street system that was identified that kind of fit the topography and fit the ravine locations. And it builds kind of on that backbone system, if you will. that provides connections throughout the area. And there's different massings of development that you can see in different areas, with more intense development being at the west end and somewhat, comparably dense development both along Beef Bend Road and in the central area, which is kind of, if my cursor can be seen and moved, central area in here. And then farther to the east is more of the very lower density, kind of what we call a rural area in terms of development densities. This is the map of the alternatives that we evaluated, with number one being the farthest south, close to the river, crosses a lot of ravines on a lot of large bridges, but it does connect over from the town center into Fisher Road. Number 2 and 3 share an alignment for some distance, almost to 150th, and they split, with 3 kind of either going to the north or coming back down to meet the alignment of 2, which comes across and connects to Fisher. Alternative 4 was closer to Beef Bend Road. We're talking probably about 600 feet of distance here, so pretty close to Beef Bend Road, either a northern or a southern alignment for alternative 4. And so we looked at all of these, and then the public had suggested an option that basically came along the alternative alignment of 2 and 3 to 150th, and then went up to 150th. And then farther to the east, that would be the collector road. Farther to the east, there would be no collector road system. Although, just from my own experience, I know that traffic is going to want to use these streets to, create and use a kind of a collector street function. So some of the concerns we had with that alternative were that it would not be designed to actually accommodate that kind of traffic. But this was what the public was interested in, or in keeping the alignment as close as possible to Beef Bend Road. And this is just some more from the concept plan, the street system, and kind of a phasing. It seems from what we've been hearing that the most interest is in the Main Street Town Center area, developing fairly quickly, and then along the existing Beef Bend Road, where utilities are more readily available and quicker to get to. And then over time, central area and the rural residential areas would be developed. The street system initially would be built out to about 150th, and then would be ultimately continued through. So when we start to think in terms of building that collector road, backbone road, if you will, through the development, it could be a very long time before it actually goes much farther east than what's shown in the first set of graphics here. It's all really dependent on the interest of the landowners in developing the land. But what this study does is provide some guidance to say that as this area develops, this is the kind of infrastructure that we want to see. This is the road system that we feel is appropriate for development in this area. So, okay, I'm going to talk about the results. This is a summary of the whole thing here, and I am going to move that little thing. Using the bubbles, we looked at land use and community design, kind of compared alternatives one to another. Alternative 2, which was the one that ran pretty much to the center of the development, and 3 south, which again ran partly with alternative 2 and then kind of broke off a little to the north and then back down to the south to Fisher. They had relatively similar alignments. From a land use and community design perspective, it ranked highest, followed by 3 north and alternative 1. And again, that has to do with their relationship with the proposed land uses in the area. And alternatives 4 and the no direct connection were, we felt, less successful in serving those land uses. Bicycle and pedestrian micromobility, again, alternative 2 and 1 were very successful, with others ranked less than that. Vehicular mobility, alternatives 2 and 3 south. Public services and utilities, alternative 2, and there's a particular concern here that has to do with the sewer system. There's a certain band of elevation where gravity sewer is most effective, and if we go, either above it or below it, we're going to be ending up with pump stations to move the sewage, which is going to have a long-term cost impact on the district as a whole. There was also some concern expressed by the city engineer about the potable water system, and if it went down into the ravines and didn't have a good way of connecting across various alternatives, that often it had to be either treated or dealt with in a a more expensive way in order to keep the water supply either pressurized appropriately and fresh water. There's some issues with respect to maintenance of the freshwater system that they express some concern about. So alternative 2 kind of came out on the top on this one. Natural resources, it really doesn't have a collector road east of 150th, the no direct connection came out on top, followed by alternative 4, and the others to a lesser degree had a variety of impacts, which we'll talk about, costs and implementation. And alternative 1, because it crosses so many ravines at very wide points, is an extremely expensive alternative. The other alternatives, when you start to look at them, not only in terms of the collector, but how it relates to the rest of the system, alternatives 3 and 4, for example, if you're going to make a connection to Fisher, you've got to include improvements along 137th. So that actually increased the cost of those somewhat as well. I'm going to go through all this in a little bit more detail. Overall, alternative 2 ranked highest, followed by 3 south, 3 north, and then 4 north. The no direct connections, minimal impacts on natural resources, but it scored poorly on many of the other factors and didn't really meet the objectives of the study, which actually have a backbone road system that connected all of Kingston Terrace to itself and also to the existing city. Alternative 1 is closest to the river. There's a lot of natural resource impacts, a lot of costs. It might actually service better as a trail than as a road system. 3 south, 3 north showed few significant differences from alternative 2. There's a lot of similarities with the different alternatives that went through the central part of the study area. Alternative 4 was favored by the residents who have commented extensively online and at community meetings. What we like to talk about now is really kind of focusing the discussion on the 2, what we see is kind of the 2 alternatives that appear to have the most interest, either in terms of how they came out in the ranking of alternatives related to alternative 2, for example, and then alternative 4, because of the public interest that had been expressed in support for that particular alternative. And so these are the comparisons. This is related to the land use element here. And I can go through some of this here. Get this thing out of the way here. Alternative 4 is more central than alternative 4 is not central. Alternative 2 is more central. Alternative 4 really is redundant to the service provided by Beef Bend Road. It parallels Beef Bend Road. It's a couple 600 feet or so from Beef Bend Road. Doesn't really serve a unifying transportation for the rest of the study area. Alternative 2 provides the connectivity of existing and new neighborhoods, and alternative 4 provides good connectivity near the Beef Bend Road area, but there's really no direct connectivity between that area and then the rest of the city. You've got to either go up and use Beef Bend Road or come down 137th and come in on Fisher. 2 has a direct connection to Fisher, 4 does not. They both have impacts to the neighborhoods just in different ways. Either directly on Fisher itself with alternative 2, or in a way that people are already seeing and commenting on, which is on 131st. So we're seeing a pattern of traffic now that's coming on Beef Bend Road, down 131st, out Fisher, southbound on Highway 99W. And that gets exacerbated if we don't have that connection on Fisher. We're going to have that traffic on 131st. It's going to be one place or another. It's kind of what the analysis has shown. Alternative 2 could potentially be good for regional transit if it's got a nice backbone route all the way from 99 over to Roy Rogers. As densities occur in this area, it would be more attractive, perhaps, than Beef Bend Road for regional transit service because it's closer to more dense development, which is good for transit. And alternative 4, it basically, wouldn't really substitute for anything on Beef Bend Road and wouldn't really service the more central parts of the community. Alternative 2 provides good access to the river, future parks. If you have seen in the report, we've got a map of the existing parks, and they kind of move through the central part of the area, and this alternative provides really good service connecting all of those parks. Looking at the active transportation system, bike and ped mobility, Alternative 2 had good connections to destinations like I mentioned, the parks, the river, the town center. Alternative 4 has good connections to Deer Creek Elementary School, but less good connections to the river and to parks. We looked at travel times for bicycles, and we also did that for vehicles, looking at a variety of point A to point B, point C to point D, point E to point F. We did a series of those and looked at travel times for all of those connections with varying travel speeds. And alternative 2 had the lowest bike travel times for a range of those selected trip pairs that I was just indicating. Alternative 4 was longer because it tended to go out of direction, and it didn't have that kind of cross ravine connectivity that alternative 2 offers, which is supportive of active transportation. The east-west connectivity across the ravines, like I just said, is encourages bicycle and pedestrian travel. We don't see that with alternative 4. There may be some local street connections, or there may be even some pathways, but we don't have the more significant transportation corridors that we have with alternative 2. Looking at vehicular mobility, alternative 2 is central to development. When you start to look at the densities that are proposed, not only along Beef Bend Road, in that central area, if you remember that colored map that I illustrated early on, there's relatively consistent densities through this whole area from Beef Bend Road down as it approaches the river in that area on the various ravine plateaus. So alternative 2 really is central to all of that more dense area. Most of the destinations in the area are well served. There's east-west connectivity would be provided across some of the ravines, good opportunities for connections with existing King City. And as I was discussing a little earlier, this alternative is going to raise traffic volumes along Fisher Road, both west of 137th and then east of the BTA alignment into the existing city. It tends to neutralize when you get east of 131st because of that pattern of traffic either using Fisher or it's using Beef Bend and it's coming down 131st and using Fisher. That's one of the primary differences, I guess, between alternative 2 and alternative 4 is what street is that traffic going to appear on. Alternative 4 wasn't really central to the development. There's a lot of direction travel to get to the existing city. It serves destinations on the north side very well, but tends to not serve other destinations within the community. It's redundant to Beef Bend Road, has relatively poor connectivity across the ravines, resulting in some isolated neighborhoods. It's got good opportunities for connecting to existing King City in certain locations. Its proximity to Beef Bend Road limits its effectiveness as a collector street. Again, it's really close. Here's Beef Bend Road, here's 4, and here's the rest of the development down here. So it's not really another good redundant alternative to Beef Bend Road. It serves almost the same function as Beef Bend Road does. Looking at public utilities and services, this is input that we got from a variety of service providers and from the city engineer looking at the various alternatives. It has lower bridge costs in terms of just looking at the bridges and the stream crossings than alternative 4. Alternative 4 has the lowest of the costs related to that, this soil erosion and slope maintenance and things of that nature. Alternative 2 has good spacing from Beef Bend Road for emergency services. It was actually the alternative that was identified as preferred by Fallen Valley Fire and Rescue. They liked the fact that it's central to the community. Alternative 4 provides good connection to the elementary school, but again, poor spacing from Beef Bend Road, resulting in some isolated neighborhoods and some indirect travel. Alternative 2 has got the best opportunity for gravity sewer because of its elevation, the path that it's following, and the elevation of that pathway to minimize the need for pump stations. Alternative 4 is going to require pump stations as you go down the service areas on each of these ravines. The sewage is going to have to be pumped back up in order to get out of the area. Minimizes dead ends for the water lines, which the city engineer expressed as a concern with alternative 2 and alternative 4. We may end up with that problem. And then the last thing had to do with looking at relocation of franchised utilities such as the electrical system. When you're looking at some of the power locations and other infrastructure that's in that BPA corridor, alternative 4 is going to require some relocation of that. Doesn't provide a good opportunity for co-location of utilities if the intent is to follow the gravity sewer line and connect into the existing city. That this doesn't do that, but alternative 2 does do that. And looking at natural resources, alternative 2 is clearly going to have higher impacts than alternative 4 because it's closer down to the ravines, the stream crossings, habitat areas. As this gets developed, though, the intent is that when we're down at the level of property being developed and we survey wetlands and we look at the quality of the natural habitat and resources that are available, that's the point at which you make every effort to avoid or to minimize those adverse impacts. So while on this initial pass that we're taking, this high level planning level pass, there are more high quality or stream crossing impacts to an alternative 4. When you actually get to building it, you can try to minimize the adverse effects associated with those impacts. Small amount of wetland impact, upland impact associated with alternative 2, and more potentially upland forest impact with alternative 4. Alternative 2 crosses the banks and conservation easement. 4 avoids it. Alternative 2 also intersects some secondary wildlife corridors, but using bridges can reduce the impacts of the effects on those wildlife corridors. Alternative 4 also intersects some secondary wildlife corridors, but the habitat is generally lower quality. A lot of information here. Cost and implementation. Alternative 2 is more costly than alternative 4. Alternative 2, however, maximizes the use of existing public rights of way that do exist in segments across the existing study area. Alternative 4 appears to require more acquisition of land right of way. When you start to look at other types of utilities, particularly the gravity sewer, alternative 2 is going to be less costly in the long term for operations and maintenance than alternative 4. And then both of them could likely be funded by transportation development taxes. But alternative 2 being more expensive may require some supplemental funding as opposed to alternative 4. The price tag is enough different that there probably will be some need for supplemental funding with alternative 2. So that's kind of that in a nutshell. Do we want to maybe stop here and talk about questions? I could go back to the map and maybe we could, but Michael, how do you want to move forward at this point?
So I think.
Well, this is live, I think.
So I think we can go through the next steps, and are you
Okay.
can try to address? I think we'd be better off just trying to get through the presentation, and just because of the format that we're in, and we can't really see everybody
Okay. All right.
with the Zoom, and so it'd be nice if we can get through the presentation and then shut that down, so then we can go full screen in here.
We go full screen.
and,
Okay.
actually see.
Well, like I said, alternative 2 ranks the highest overall, and the plan was to carry that forward into the master plan as the east-west collector street. However, there's also a variety of other street classifications, neighborhood route being one of those, which is, if you think of like the collectors we're defining as sort of the major collector, these would be like minor collectors, meaning that they gather and group traffic coming from the local streets and they route it up to higher order streets such as the arterials. So both the collector and the neighborhood routes serve that function. They have slightly different design standards. Neighborhood route is a little smaller. It has some different features and characteristics associated with it than the collector street does. But alternative 2 would be the collector, and then parts of alternative 3 and alternative 4 we see as really good neighborhood routes, and alternative 1 as a multi-use path, as I kind of alluded to earlier in the presentation, simply because of the length of some of the ravine crossings and the You know, when you've got a wide road with lots of travel lanes and bikes and peds and other things on it, it's much more expensive to cross, say, a 500-foot ravine that, with a, I don't know, 80-foot, 75, 80-foot road, all inclusive, versus a path that might be 18 to 20 feet wide. So it's significantly less costly. The alternatives are, at this point, fat lines on a map. They would be adjusted to accommodate specific and individual land uses and environmental factors as the master planning process proceeds. And then final east-west circulation plan with showing the collectors the neighborhood routes, not only east-west, but also north-south, how they connect up to Beef Bend Road, will be submitted to the Planning Commission and City Council for adoption as part of the master plan and the transportation system plan. So here we are back at the map. I don't remember what's next. Next steps, mid-November, the draft master plan is anticipated to be completed, as Keith had indicated, and then the next round of community meetings in December and January. And that's it.
So, and before we go, before we go any further, is it possible that, you know, Marcy shared some documents with the group today? I know they're really rough, but is it possible to talk a little bit about the backbone streets that Marcy
did? I have that. I can stop sharing this and share that if you'd like.
Yeah, I think it's really useful to see those cross sections and the kind of general alignment on where those streets are. And I know Marcy's on too, but you know, this doc, unfortunately, I just got it before the meeting, so I didn't get a chance to print it out for everybody, but it would be really nice to share this so that folks can kind of take a look at it. It just has the cross sections and images.
I gotta find it. Give me a second here. Well, I gotta get this thing off my screen here.
I might have it, Ann. Do you want me to try to pull it up?
I got it. I have to find it on my screen. It's open and it was ready. I just couldn't find it. Okay, here it is. Let me get back to the system here. Here it is. Got it. Okay, can you see it? Mike, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so this is kind of alluding to what I was describing when we talked about this alternative 2 here, no longer called alternative 2. It's just the backbone collector street here. It would continue west into the town center area and connecting with an intersection over on Roy Rogers. Other collectors would run continuation of River Terrace Boulevard, Elsner Road, 150th and 137th. Those would all be collector streets. And then the blue roads here are the neighborhood routes. So this was alternative 4 here previously. This was part of alternative 3, which could connect down here. You know, this is very early days in terms of what we're looking at. Then I had some north-south roads in the town center area, and then alternatives here to connect to Beef Bend Road that are neighborhood routes that service the area. Marcy's made some indication here about kind of cross sections. She's given the numbers, and there's some graphics that are on the following page that kind of give you an idea of what this would look like. But basically, we're talking about an 84-foot wide right-of-way at the west end of the major collector, 84 feet, and then narrower as it crosses into the eastern part of the study area where we have the lower density residential development, and then widening out again as we approach the BPA alignment. And then some of these other streets, 70 feet of right of way, for example, on the neighborhood routes.
Can you show those the cross sections that we were talking about?
Yep.
Thrown out of in the.
This was number 1 that was at the west end in the town center area, what it would look like. Number two, which was a little to the east of the town center area, again, fairly dense development, good setback from the street to provide not only bicycle, but pedestrian facilities and trees, street amenities and that sort of thing. And we have travel lanes, one travel lane in each direction. We have on-street parking, which you'll see in both of these instances. It's not a 4-lane road, it's two-lane road with on-street parking. And then there's a kind of a divider here, a buffer, if you will, to separate the bikes from the parking lane. And then alternative 3, where we have that narrower section of the east-west collector street. Again, we have quite a lot of setback and we don't have any on-street parking in this area. That was to minimize the footprint, if you will, of the road through this area. And then alternatives 4 and 5 is, again, alternative 5 was on just a kind of a typical example, if you will, of what the neighborhood route would look like. Again, simply in each direction, sort of the boulevard treatment, kind of a Green Street treatment of having this in the center, and then travel lanes on each side. And then you'd have pathways, you'd have bike and pedestrian pathways off the street, or you could actually ride in the street if you wanted to and use it as a shared use kind of facility.
Mike, what's the width of Fisher within Edgewater community right now? Like what's
30. I think it's 34, right, Keith? And that's curb to curb, I think.
Yeah, 30. I think it's 36.
So where do they
36
actually?
curb to curb.
So where do they?
Yeah.
36. Okay, and is that when we look at this, where are we starting and stopping?
It's basically your neighborhood collector version that you have there. The
Right here. Right. So this is 80 feet basically from edge of right of way to edge of right of way. And then you've got quite a long distance on both sides for pathways and some landscaping. You've got 8 foot on both sides for parking, 11 to 12 foot travel lanes. I'm not sure which marks he had assumed here. I can't read them. They're too tiny. And then,
So about 32, 38.
but it's,
so the neighborhood collector is what you have at Fisher, 136, Shakespeare. Which other ones do you have? I think those are the primary ones. They're 136 and Shakespeare.
blow that up a little bit here. We can read the numbers.
And I thought there was one version where we had 2 travel lanes. And I thought it was the micro-mobility one with the total right-of-way of 48, but it had the east-west travel lane and then a separated multi-use path on one side for that, like for the rural
For the segment as it approaches 137th. Yeah, I think those are details that we'll work out as we get through, more complete in the master planning process. This is just an initial set of cross sections that are kind of typical or average for a section of road, and that we need more work on these. Basically, this is very early days on them.
I think that if I could jump in, I know these dimensions are a little hard to read, but to the question about how does this compare to Fisher Road today? Mike, Fisher Road doesn't have on-street parking, right?
Parts of it do.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we have in this, that would be very typical for curb to curb on most of these streets is what is on Fisher today. With the exception of these ones that are micro mobility accommodating, those have additional width, sometimes behind the parked cars to accommodate a kind of first class bicycle route, which could also accommodate slightly wider vehicles like golf carts, micro mobility vehicles. But they're always 2 lanes travel, that's it. They're no bigger than that. And the idea of using roundabouts as intersections in most locations means that we can reduce the incident of widening at the intersections for left turn lanes.
So yeah, here's I kind of distinguish between roundabouts as their transportation function versus traffic circles, which are smaller And actually they're intended to serve a speed slowing, traffic calming effect. So collector to collector, I think it's appropriate that we look at the slightly larger traffic carrying calming roundabout. But as we get into some of these other areas, using more of a speed management and traffic calming traffic circle, a smaller device is kind of where I was thinking.
And if you want to, you can show those images from NACDO at the very end of the presentation.
End of the presentation.
Yeah,
Okay.
they show a traffic circle and oops,
The very
wrong. Sorry, that was in the presentation that I just sent to
Oh, sorry, I don't have that one.
Well, there's an example right there. If you go to slide 6, that's an example of an approach to a roundabout. Again, so if we use roundabouts, there's an advantage for the narrowing of the street itself and keeping that to 2 lanes. But we have to be really careful about the design so that it accommodates micromobility devices, including bicycles, and that there's plenty of refuge space for someone to wait to cross, safe waiting space.
There's lots of little subtleties in this design as well, too, by forcing somebody to come in and sort of angle themselves this way. You're forcing them to look at the road that's, and the traffic that might be coming at them, as opposed to just flat straight across where they have to actually turn and look. This makes the oncoming traffic much more visible, and it's a much safer design. Lots of little features like that, they would get built into these.
And if you go one map up, you can also show the slide 5. I was trying to draw here that obviously the Fisher alignment may not go in for a very long time. It may go just to 150th in the near future or even the mid future. And so if that is the, kind of first class micromobility accommodating route, you're going to want another one sooner. So that's where the idea of using the local street to the north as a kind of first phase build out of a bicycle, right?
This neighborhood route here.
Coming down to 130th on that one.
To where? I'm sorry.
At the end, instead of going
down
up to
here,
Beef
down
Bend,
here.
you come down and get on
Yeah,
Fisher there, or get on Capulet. I'm sorry, onto Capulet.
On Capulet. Okay. Yeah, this is not for the larger vehicles. This is for the small, the bikes, the peds, the golf carts, the electric scooters, things of that nature, e-bikes.
We want to make sure that those can travel on day one, along with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other things that I think Keith and I had discussed were, in an effort to retain the parking on Fisher, that we could split out like a designated bike path that could potentially follow King Lear or Sebastian or something to that effect, so that I think because the transportation system plan had called for bike lanes on Fisher going through from 131st to towards Delia Place, and I think Keith and I had both provided comments on that we prefer to retain the parking along Fisher and try to designate bike routes that would be able to accommodate those maybe off the main path. Keith, do you have any input on that? Are you available or are you step away?
Yes, I am. So we were thinking that we could use King Lear either as a one-way eastbound for bikes, and then you would have a bike lane on one side on Fisher going westbound, or you could have bike traffic both directions on King Lear. Once you get east of King Lear, there's not a lot of parking demand on the remainder of Fisher going out to 131st. So it seems like having bike lanes on both sides on that section would be more feasible. Because if we do bike lanes on the other section of Fisher on both sides, then we'd probably have to remove all the parking.
Right, I think that's what I recall too.
Well,
I wanna
so in
clarify-
this
I wanna-
scheme. No, never
Go ahead.
mind. No, you go ahead. That's okay.
I want to make sure that I really understand, because I can see that what was just showed is going to be a huge flashpoint following this meeting. So can you go back to the examples of the collectors and micro mobility page?
This is the micro, just the original graphic.
Sorry,
here. This one.
the next one, I think the next one down. Yeah, the cross section. Yeah.
Cross sections. Okay.
Yeah.
We are.
Okay, so I just want to be really clear that what we're talking about here are just styles and types of examples that could be used. They are not the specific examples that are currently being proposed. This is kind of just a work in progress and kind of a sampling of what options are out there. Is that correct?
There's more options, and I think.
I mean, there's more options than this, but I just want to make clear that this is not in any type of final form or proposal, that this is just used as an example to us here today at what the possibilities are. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think what we're trying to do is give you an idea of what the streets may look like from a cross-section standpoint, so that you can visualize how much space we have to work with within any particular right-of-way, and knowing that the collectors there's not one set description diagram cross-section for the neighborhood routes and collectors. Like, they can fit any one of these.
Right, they can ebb and flow, we can, right.
Based on right-of-way, terrain,
Right.
contours, what have you. And so we can narrow it down, or we can widen it out based on the land that or the area that we have.
There was a statement that was made earlier on when it started moving from west to east about these cross sections and what they envisioned would happen for each section as they moved east, correct?
Yes.
So when you're talking about Edgewater and Fisher Road, what's the total right of way right now from sidewalk to sidewalk?
And in Edgewater, right?
In Edgewater.
Yeah, once you pass 131 in the neighborhood.
What's the complete right of way, including sidewalks?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Steve, it's 59, isn't it, or 58? Along Fisher there with the two sidewalks.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but it's right around 60 feet.
Okay, so if you have 58 feet or 60 feet, and you're talking about adding a bike lane, can you add a bike lane right now without moving the parking?
No, that's why we were saying we needed to reroute the bike to King Lear.
So then you're talking about rerouting bike lanes on a different roadway. And then you're talking about one-way bike lanes. Didn't I hear the comment about one-way bike lanes?
Well, the problem is that the segment between 137th to 147th would be 2 lanes with a separated bike head facility on the south side.
We're talking about 147th though.
So once it gets to 131st. Yeah, so once it gets to 137th, the bike lane is still separate from the main path. And so it would just veer slightly to the south to connect with King Lear, and then it would join into the main traffic there. So you would have bike and vehicular traffic intermingled on those streets. But they're a lower volume street, and it's also, correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, but King Lear is 28 feet wide? Is that?
That sounds right. If there's parking along one side, it would be 28. If there's no parking, it would be 22 feet.
I think there's parking on one side, so I think it's there's parking on one side, so I think it's 28 feet.
Yeah.
And then you would have bicycles going both directions. So you would have to demarcate the bike path coming off of 131st Street to take a left and follow King Lear to the eventual bike path. So then it would go into just standard.
So I'm not familiar with King Lear.
Right.
But, so you would have two travel lanes. A separate bike lane, you're saying, or the bike lane would be within those two travel lanes?
So you would have the bikes on the street from 131st to King Lear, and then they would peel off and follow King Lear to the south, and then follow King Lear across the Bonneville line and join the multi-use trail, which would be on the south side of an extended alternative to going out that trail.
Doesn't sound very safe to me, but is there a possibility of having separate bike paths separated from streets? Just dedicated micromobility pathway somewhere between 131st and the side of the power lines.
Possibility exists. In the transportation system plan, there's a multi-use trail that's identified from 99W over to 131st Street, and then it goes up to Bradley, and from Bradley over to Kingston Park, and then it would continue over and hit River Lane, and then follow River Lane up and over, and then potentially drop back down towards the river and follow the river. And that's that riverfront Walton Greenway trail that Metro has dotted on that. That would be your alternative pathway.
Would it be Bradley or Bedford? Bedford's the farthest.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Bedford.
Okay.
So that's way in the future, because at first there was discussion about having bicycle travel immediately available through more close to East Bend Road in a new neighborhood between Route 4 and East Bend Road, having bike coming over to 137 and dropping down along 137th and then cutting over.
Yeah.
I think she showed that one where Capulet kind of popped through, which would be bicycle,
So if you have
bike.
bicycles going to Capulet.
I don't think that's a good
Is
idea.
that the initial plan though? Because we saw where bikes would come across, come down 137th and then go over 131st via Capulet.
Not
Here's the
sure.
plan.
I'm not
So
sure.
there was a diagram that showed, so I'm just curious what you're looking at.
Yeah, I think, the neighborhood route that is alternative 4 is like the temporary stopgap, because it would be built like, Fisher currently, from 131st to, right? So you're looking at a streetscape that has parking and, vehicular and bicycle traffic intermingled with a separated sidewalk. And I think that's the profile for the neighborhood route. And I'm pretty sure, and Keith, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but those are considered multimodal, where the bikes share the lanes with the vehicles, right?
That's correct. So it would be like other local streets you see with, I assume everybody's familiar with sharrows and what those are. So it would probably be something to help indicate the route, make motorists aware that bicyclists are in there too. And those can work really well when you have a low volume, low speed street.
Like what's 131 with the bike lane on the side and then the sidewalk?
That's
What,
an arterial. 131st is an arterial street. These would be a step down.
a step down from that? Because I think the cross sections, to me, the cross sections are difficult, because I look at this and I see 4 lanes of traffic, right? And so that's where, like, that's parking.
This is parking. Parking.
This is parking? Okay,
Yeah, the outside, yeah.
Okay, so
One
these are
person for the
parking
curb,
cars.
Parking, travel lane, and then a protected.
Parking, a little
Parking.
buffer, and then.
Parking,
Got it.
travel.
Okay, I can't read
Yeah,
that,
I
so,
can't read
yeah, it's hard, it's just hard to read the graphic, so, like, from where
Yeah.
I'm sitting, it looks like a 4-lane road with a big median, and, I was like, oh my God.
That's not like Shakespeare or, I mean, you're basically looking at Shakespeare. for sure.
Yeah.
Got it. Right,
It would be really helpful if we had this that directly referenced the existing parts of the city,
I think that would be helpful.
so that we really could know what we're talking about.
I think the difference
Yeah.
between what you see up here versus what's on the ground is that, the planter strips and the sidewalks are wider here. They're visioned wider to give more space, and it used to be just a 5-foot sidewalk was ample, and now, you know, you're looking at
8 foot, right?
yeah, 8-foot minimum or 10-foot is ideal, you know? So that widens that out a little bit more. And you also have planter strips that are no longer like 3 or 4 feet, they're
Right.
more like 5 to 6 feet.
Yeah.
So you have a little bit more right of way there.
Are we required to provide parking?
So
Okay. I know, I'm not saying we shouldn't have any parking, I'm not even, I know, listen, all roads lead back to parking issues, I know it
I
well.
don't think we can require parking, which is another
Right.
problem in its own right.
But, you know, we have this opportunity to kind of be to really put forward our values as a city, be sustainable, be cutting edge, be thinking out of the box. And, you know, I think there's some really good opportunity to, right?
Yeah, so one of the things and Marcy, you can talk about this as well, but most of the street designs or cross sections that we had talked about in the concept plan integrated some sort of low intensity or mechanism to deal with stormwater, like on site. So like they're called, I think, LIDARs, right?
Low
I
impact,
forget what they are.
yeah, low impact,
What?
green design, stormwater retention, like is in that 6-foot plant strip there, that could be a stormwater facility.
Yeah, I mean, I just think we have such an opportunity to be innovative and, right,
So
so.
that's what we talked about using for like the center median and those planter strips on each side. But we'd have to get buy-in from Clean Water Services on those as well, because they do take a lot of maintenance and upkeep on that front.
Mhm.
So there's an added maintenance cost long-term for having those types of facilities.
Any opportunity to have a work session with Clean Water Services?
Well, we've been.
I mean, I know you guys, of course, right, but I mean.
And one of the other things, you know, we're talking with TGM, Transportation Growth Management, to see about working on Beach Bend a little bit, to come up with a design for Beach Bend because it's interagency, there's 3 different agencies there, and what that's going to look like, and get some intersection spacing agreements and traffic flow agreements on Beach Bend. And so, and funding agreement, intersection spacing, those sort of things, street design, cross section. Are the houses going to face Beach Bend? Are there going to be traffic circles? What's it going to look like? Where are those intersections at? And it really help us in our long-term planning, dealing with Beach Bend. So hopefully we can get that off the ground as well. Keith, Ann, Marcy, anything to wrap us up?
Not right now.
Just clearly lots of work ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of information. I know that it's trickling out piece by piece, and there's a lot of questions associated with it. There's obviously a lot of concern and worries about connecting those roads over. We heard that at the public meeting the other day.
I guess if I could just say one thing, Mike, kind of a big takeaway is no street is more than 2 lanes traffic. And I think there might be a concern about the number of lanes and the total width, but we're talking about streets that are very narrow.
I think that's
With
been our
traffic
goal from the
circles.
beginning, not to be a highway divider throughout our community there, because we've seen what like 99Ws or Guardies or those sort of things will do, Beach Bends and things. We're trying to keep them as personable as possible.
So Washington County's letter talked about they support intercity, right? Means internal connectivity. connectivity within the city of King City. I think it's important to have intra-city connectivity, not necessarily direct connectivity where you're traversing the city. I think that's an important thing to recognize. Also, 2 lanes of travel, you're talking about Durham Road is 2 lanes of travel. Portions of 12th Sherwood Road are 2 lanes of travel, right? So you can have 2 lanes of travel, you can have high volume. So I think the concern that I heard from the community the other night was to not have people traversing the city from east to west. The 99W to Roy Rogers is the concern. And it was voiced over and over and over again. I don't think anybody's opposed to having connectivity within the city. If you live in Kingston Terrace, to be able to travel from one end of town to the other or within the city. If you live, somewhere in the east, you want to go to a park, you're not traversing the city. If you want to go to the school, you're not traversing the city. If you go to the town center and you live in the middle of Kingston Terrace, you're not traversing the city. The OD pairs in the study get DMTs traversing the city, side to west side of the city. So I think we need to think about city connection, activity within Kingston Terrace. I know there was some talk about north-south collectors coming from River Terrace 2.0. Now you're introducing a whole new set of homes, another thousands of homes coming down off the south side of Bull Mountain into Kingston Terrace to work their way down to Fisher Road to get to 99W. So I think these are the things we really need to think about as far as do we want, what kind of city do we want? Do we want a bustling metropolis with people coming from all over the region into Kingston Terrace? We want a city somewhat similar to what we have right now, where tranquil, peaceful, nice place to live, but we're accommodating, thinking about the residents of King City, not trying to accommodate the region. So much building going on right now. Tigard, Kingston Terrace, Terrace, River Terrace 2.0, and who knows what this isn't going to be.
In 50 years, we're gonna have from King City to Hillsborough will be filled in.
So
I mean,
it should be the
it's coming,
responsibility
regardless of what we do.
It should be the responsibility of Kingston Terrace to provide an avenue for regional traffic.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing I think that people are trying to communicate. Live here and want the city not to become a avenue for traversing.
So we're running late, obviously. It's clear to us all. Other questions as we wrap this up and move into council session? Mike, what's the plan to have kind of future work groups or I guess the next round of public engagement is going to be December, January.
November, next round. At least that's our target. Our target is November, next round, and hopefully have some of these master plan concepts refined a little bit.
Yeah. But it would be nice to have some conversations, and tonight the presentation was great, and I think everyone joining us tonight presenting, it would be nice to, following presentations, have more time to talk and discuss and ask questions, and right. So we'll look forward to getting those scheduled and having them come down to talk about it.
The problem is the work session, and if we're going to be talking about things that we have to do that in public session, right?
Sure.
So that's the difference. Like here, it's just it's informational because it's a work session.
Mm-hmm.
I do have questions, and they're not, I don't have to ask them tonight, but I would like to ask questions to understand what's being presented, and I don't think we need to do that in a regular meeting. I think that's a work session.
Yeah, I think that's my point too. We want to have a little flexibility to be able to have conversations, and so it's. I know they have to be public, right? And that, we have nothing to hide. I don't mind that, but it just is hard to understand at what point it's appropriate, when to talk. How do we ask questions? All that. So we'll just continue to converse and figure out when we can get this scheduled.
I think there's more and more information coming out every day.
Sure.
So I think as the pieces of information come out, hopefully we can sit down and present it and have a little more time. Today was a bit of a disaster getting off the ground. Apologize for that. You know, we need to do better, and hopefully we can in the future. But yeah, and then hopefully we have time to, a little more time for discussion.
Cool. Okay, great. Well, with that, any other questions here tonight before we close the work session and move on? All right, so then, let's see. Marcy, Ann, Keith, everyone from the Planning Commission, and thank you for participating. I guess we had one, two, I don't know, people who joined, so thanks. So then, yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. That will close the work session, and then we'll get going on our council meeting in 5. this evening. We have some technical difficulties with Zoom at our work session that delayed the work session, which then delayed our council session. So we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. Mike, you want to give us a roll call?
Sure. Mayor Pender?
Here.
Walton? Here. Councilor Bell?
Here.
Councilor Petrie?
Here.
Councilor Moore?
Here.
Councilor Thompson online?
Did you hear?
We'll,
Yeah, we got you.
Councilor Ocholi online?
Yes, I'm here.
sorry,
Can you hear me
Smart,
okay?
I almost cut you off. We can hear you, yeah.
Okay.
All right, we will move straight into the approval of the minutes. We have September 7th, 2022 minutes. We'll entertain a motion.
Let's see, section 5B. The typo is that I made the motion and seconded it.
Okay.
It was really.
What I hear you really saying is that you're moving to amend.
Yes, I'm moving to amend
And with those,
5 section B.
all right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion on Mark's proposed amendment? Hearing none, call all those that approve. Approving the minutes with said changes, raise your hand.
Make a motion to approve minutes with amendment.
There you go.
That's clear for the record. Yeah, thank you. All right. Who's taking? I don't see the winner. And then, okay, Smart and, all right. Unanimous. All right, moving on to our special presentation. So we have a special presentation of the Family Justice Center. And we have Rachel here with us tonight. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, guys.
Nice seeing you. I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself, and I'll hand it over to you. I'm happy to see you, and welcome. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time. I do apologize that I'm not in person. I was going to be, and then I needed to help provide some after hours services. So thank you for the accommodation of being on Zoom. And thank you all again for taking the time. I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about the importance of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which you all as a council have chosen to do a proclamation for and proclaiming it in your city. And I just really want to thank you for that. That is, it seems perhaps small, and it seems perhaps just part of the routine of going through meetings, but it really does mean a lot. I am continuously impressed by our community in how much they stand together for their community members. As we maybe know or maybe don't know, Oregon, unfortunately, has a higher than the national average rate of not only domestic violence, but also sexual assault. And what is really pervasive about those two things is that violence really thrives in silence. Domestic violence, sexual assault, and also child abuse are purposefully kept quiet. And that is what allows them, by and large, to continue and go uninterrupted. And so by taking the time to stand up as a community and as a council and say that we are going to recognize that this is something that is happening in our community, as much as we don't like to think about it and as much as we wish that it wasn't happening, we're going to recognize that there needs to be additional supports put in place. And by making this a public proclamation, we are signaling, most importantly, to the survivors in our community that there are people that care about them, that their community is a safe place, and that there are people that will believe them. That is huge for survivors, that somebody would believe that what is happening to them is real. Because like I said, abuse is purposefully kept silent, And one of those tactics is to make the survivor believe that what they're experiencing isn't real, is normal, or is their fault. And by standing up as a community and saying it's not, and we believe you, and you are not alone, we can work together to break those cycles of violence. I had the pleasure of visiting you all last January to give you an update on our annual report and the numbers for the city, and we will get to do that again. And during those meetings, King City really stepped up and said that they wanted to help survivors know where to go to get the support, and that is very critical. And I want to share with you that by stepping up and working hard to help survivors know that there's a resource for them to go where they can get their needs met in a single place that you as a city support, we have seen a threefold increase in the number of people that we have seen and the number of services that we have delivered this year over last year. So last year we saw just a little over 1,900 survivors. This year so far, we have seen over 3,100 survivors. And last year we provided north of 2,000 services, and this year we have provided north of 5,700 services. And so that's hard to hear. I know as a community that there are that many people that sought out support in 1 year's time. But to me, it's hopeful. I know the statistics about how often violence and abuse are happening inside of homes, and to see the number of people seeking support increasing is good. When I see the numbers across our communities decreasing, then I will feel good about our numbers decreasing. But right now I feel very hopeful that our cities are working so hard to ensure that their survivors know that there is somewhere that they can get help, that there is somewhere that they will be believed, and they do not have to keep themselves and their stories silent in the face of what they are experiencing. So thank you so much for everything that you have done over this last year, and I look forward to joining you again in January to share an update about the progress that your city is making towards ending violence in our community. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Thank you, Rachel. Questions for Rachel? Is everyone here familiar with the Family Justice Center? Maybe Rachel, why don't you, just for those maybe watching on Zoom or who might watch our YouTube channel later, can you just give a quick overview of, the Family Justice Center and what services are provided there, and just kind of run us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Family Justice Center is located in Beaverton, right on the Beaverton-Hillsborough line off of Walker Road and 158th. And we are an organization that brings together all of the survivor serving organizations and social services in Washington County. So we have now 17 agencies inside of this facility, including the Domestic Violence Resource Center, Sexual Assault Resource Center, Community Action, different police departments, as well as we have a courthouse. So if people need on-site protective orders, they can get those. We provide childcare, counseling, support groups, and lots of basic needs supplies. So we have a clothing closet, food pantry, food on site, as well as any sort of hygiene supplies, diapers, baby formula, all those sorts of things. And we bring everything together so that survivors do not have to go 17 different locations in order to get their needs met, when we know that barriers are already so high for survivors in seeking that safety. So we want to make sure that we can lower amongst our providers as many of those barriers as possible, put everybody in the same center, and do the work to make sure that all of our services are coordinated, that survivors only have to do one intake form, that they only have to tell their story as many times as they want to, and they don't have to travel all around the county, which is a very large county. We're about 650 square miles. And so if you maybe have kids with you, if you have to take public transportation, whatever those additional barriers are to going to different locations, let alone finding the ability to leave a really unsafe situation, We got together as a community and we said we need something better for survivors. And so why not put all of the services they need in one location to make it easier for them? So that's who we are and that's what we do. And that's what the community of Washington County supports us doing.
Thank you, Rachel. Questions or comments?
Yeah, question. Do you guys also provide services for like elder abuse?
We do. Yep. So all of the different services, all of the different forms that we provide support for is domestic violence and intimate partner violence, sexual violence. We provide support for elder abuse, for sex trafficking, for family violence. And soon in the near future, we will also be providing support and resources on site for child abuse and neglect.
Other questions or comments? What about Smart or Shauna? I don't want to forget you guys on Zoom. So if you had any questions or comments, we'll hand it over to you for a minute.
Hi, this is Councilor Thompson. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your presentation. I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that.
And this is
now,
Smart. Yes.
Oh, sorry, Smart. Go ahead.
Yes, I just also want to say thank you again with the pandemic and everything, challenges, and really appreciate what you and the team are doing. Not an easy task. I mean, thank you for the services provided. Thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Smart. I appreciate that.
And I think that's it. So Rachel, thank you so much. I will be, in my presentation later in council, I will be highlighting the Gathering of Hope, which I attended, which I just think you guys did such an amazing job with. And so I'll talk about that a little bit later. But really appreciate you spending time tonight and coming to share with us what you do. And I guess, so with that, you are welcome. I do have a question, point of order, Mike. So we don't have the proclamation here on the proclamation was signed last month. Oh, wonderful. Okay, so our proclamation was signed last month. I apologize that Rachel, I had to leave the council meeting a little early last month, so there we are. But I'm glad. I was like, oh, I thought we were doing that tonight, but I'm glad we already did it. We're ahead of the curve. So I appreciate you and thank you for sticking with us. And I'm sorry we were delayed tonight and set you back a bit, but thank you for joining us. And we look forward to when you come and give us your annual report.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you all. No worries about being late. I was also late. I was in a panic a bit, so it worked out perfectly. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your meeting. Don't work too hard, and I'll see you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. Well, good. Now I'm caught up. Okay. All right. At this time, we are going to move on to our open forum. This is our portion for our public comment and testimony. Let me read our little, so the preamble is, at this time, the council will be happy to receive your comments pertaining to items on the agenda, including questions, suggestions, complaints, and items for the future. Each person's time will be limited to 3 minutes. Please come up to the podium if you have comments, state your name, and then state where you live, your address. And then I think we'll do those in the room first, and then Ronnie, if we have any on Zoom, you can get those. Okay, we'll start here in the room then. So if anyone wants to have public comment, you're welcome to join. Oh, okay.
So I have Carl.
That's great. Yep.
Greg, sorry. Janet. Carl is all I have that signed up for it.
All right. Please do it.
Is the mic on?
It should be. If it's not,
You can push the, yeah.
red button. Red button. Oh.
Fire detail, right?
Right. Now it's on. Now.
There we go.
Okay. Greg Russell, Tigard. Okay. First of all, I wanted to the planners and all the counselors. You have volunteered your personal time for the greater good, giving your time and energy to tackle a lot of complex issues that still need to be resolved. There are no good guys or bad guys in this scenario on the transportation issues, and we are not against development. We want intelligent planned development and an opportunity to express our views. You need to ask the hard questions, make your own decisions on what is best for King City. Keep in mind, you represent not just the people of King City, but you represent Edgewater, Rivermead, the 147th community, and you represent all the future residents coming into Kingston Terrace. You also represent the Tualatin River, natural scenic areas, and you represent all the wildlife. And don't be afraid to speak out and to ask questions. For those of you that attended the October 11th Public Open Forum, you might now have a better idea of the severe opposition to alternatives 1, 2, and 3. Instead of hearing, we'll take this under consideration, and we want you to know we're listening. We want you to take action and move ahead. Let's work together to come up with solutions we can all live with. Former Governor McCall said, "May we forever prove by our actions that people can join together for mutual benefit and greater good." Are you ready to make that commitment? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, check the red.
Is the red button pushed down?
I think you turned it, did you turn it off? No. Oh, try one more time. There we go. Now, there we hear it. Okay. Yeah. So, perfect. There you go.
My name is Janet Black. I live at 13960 Southwest River Lane.
Sorry, Janet, just a second. We're getting some feedback.
Yeah, I know.
I just don't want to I don't want to interrupt you when, I want to make sure we fix it before you start talking.
Okay, does it work now?
That's better. That's better. Okay.
Okay, so I live in Rivermead, and I know Rivermead has resisted King City expansion, and I hope that doesn't cause you to dismiss my personal journey has been one similar to the grieving process. After all, I am losing the essence of the neighborhood where I have lived for 22 years. However, the reality is that we are in the urban growth boundary and development is going to happen, and I accept that. At last week's public meeting, there were many comments against the extension of Fisher Road. There were also many comments about planning the expansion in a smart way that is sensitive to the natural resources and to existing neighborhoods. And I thought that this message might have been overlooked. So I decided to come here tonight to talk directly to City Councilor. I have been rereading the concept plan in the last few weeks, and I think it is a pretty good plan. Mike Weston made a comment in one of the public meetings in the last few months that I think is pretty accurate, that there is more to the King City expansion than just the roads, that the roads are getting most of the attention. I ask you to consider that the reason that the East-West Collector Road has gotten so much attention and public response is that it might be the most significant decision regarding the expansion that you would make. It seems that the areas that most concern your residents are natural resources and neighborhood buildability. So I ask, what if you direct the staff to find a road that meets the goal of connecting King City without providing a straight line which benefits outsiders who want to avoid East End Road? What if you directed staff to find a road that meets the goal of connecting King City without damaging the natural environment? We are blessed to have the Tualatin River and related natural spaces. What if you directed staff to protect it the greatest amount? What if you heard the residents' concerns not as being from people who simply don't want change, but people who are deeply concerned and connected with this area and want the development in the best possible way? What if you consider the possibility that the consultants didn't choose the road that most benefits King City? There is a lot of information that you will be asked to review, and the analysis to select the location of the East-West Collector Road has a lot of technical information. There are also publicly submitted documents that will give you another way to interpret the information and analysis and provide a different viewpoint on the best location for a collector road. What if you talked directly with some of the people who cared enough to write these comments to try to understand the different perspectives? I think it will be tempting to rely on the conclusion provided by the consultant. I also think that will be pressure on you to not delay the approval process. I understand it has gone on for a long time and there are significant financial implications. It would take courage to go against the momentum that the current plan has. But this is a decision that cannot be undone. Mayor Fender said that she would make a decision that benefits the most people. I understand that to mean King City current and future residents and not the outsiders. I agree, and I hope that you would add to the benefit of the natural environment. I implore you to read and think about the information and make your own decision about what is best for King City and the Fulton River.
Thank you. Just to clarify too, my comment was the benefit the most people to the detriment of the least amount of people. So, but no, that's fine. I just want to make sure that, you know, since it was a quote of mine, I wanted to make sure what my quote was. But I thank you for highlighting it. Thank you for your comments.
Is someone online?
And all right, then we have, we're going to go to our Zoom and it will be Carl.
Okay, can you hear me?
You can, Carl.
Okay. I'd like to clarify or get clarification.
Oops, sorry,
on
Carl, I'm going to stop you. Carl, sorry. Please introduce yourself and then state where you live.
Oh, okay. My name is Carl Swanson. I gave comments at the last open meeting, public meeting, and I live in the Kingston Terrace study area.
Thank you.
Okay. There still seems to be some misinformation that at this point I would hope that could get clarified, so as people start making decisions, they're working from the facts. One that's been said many times is, you know, we can go ahead and have alternative 2 be our preferred alternative and it doesn't require condemnation. I think that was clarified at the meeting, at the open public meeting. I think it was clarified further with the October 18 letter you received recently from the Columbia Land Trust. So it seems like the consultants would be able to show that when you try to put a road, and I know at this point it's just a wide line on a map, but if you try to fit that wide line on a map, there is no way to do it without condemnation. So if people are going to make decisions, they should have the facts. So I would like that clarified. The other misinformation is on alternatives 3 North and 4, that they, one of the reasons they're not preferred is because they have dead ends, but they're not dead ends. They'd all be looped. They could all be flushed with, you know, a single or 2 valves installed. Normally done in lots of places, serviced by Tigard Water, which is going to be your servicer. So that's to continue to see that is additional misinformation. The other one is the gravity sewer line requirement, or the preference for gravity sewer line, meaning that you need alternative 2 when you don't, and that keeps being spread. So I'd like to read something from the design of sewer lines, and maybe I realize, you know, you got a transportation engineer writing this up, but still it says in the technical documents, I'll quote, "The design of inverted siphons requires the consideration of a wide range of issues, which if not accommodated can lead to future operational problems. Recommendations that siphons should be avoided are common in sewage design literature. However, they are often the only economic option for crossing water bodies, valleys, or transport corridors. They are a reality for many sewer networks, and so their weaknesses need to be understood and mitigated by the engineers
to avoid the effects and to mitigate to an acceptable level. So to just throw it out when you're making such an important decision was really misinformation. So it could be included. King City has a siphon that goes under the Tualatin River. There are many siphons, inverted siphons, already in service in clean water services. So this is the exact place where you would want to consider that design because of the unique nature of the topography. So to throw it out in this specific case is really unjustified. So to cavalierly have that said and have all the decision makers who aren't engineers taking one person's opinion is really misleading. And they need to back that up and state the facts. The other thing is you showed on your backbone map, alternative 5, going through the Rivermead area, and you showed a traffic circle, roundabout, that any design I've seen on that would require the removal of 2 houses, 2 of my neighbors. So you talk about, oh, we like alternative 2 because we don't have to remove houses. I can think of 3 houses just based on what you showed today that would have to be removed. 1 at the roundabout, 2 at the roundabout. The other one, you showed a cross section of 80 feet right away. Well, the current right of way is only 50 feet. So you're going to take 30 additional feet from these people? And David commented during the open meeting that his house would have to be removed. And when you continue to show 80 feet, yes, his house would be removed, the one he just rebuilt. So this misinformation is causing a lot of problems, both in your decisions and for the people that currently live here. So it needs to be fixed. And I don't know how to do that because we have very few opportunities for input to try to help correct problems and misstatements.
Thank you, Carl.
And that's all I have, unless somebody wanted to.
Because you're not here. Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't want to cut you off. It's just because you're not here. I'm assuming that is the end of your comment. And right, as a reminder, these open forum is always a little difficult because it doesn't allow us to have dialogue. It allows you to put your comments on the record and allow us to think about them and listen to you. But there isn't in this particular setup, there isn't a way to have any kind of exchanges. So, so with that, I thank you, Carl, for your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment or step up to the podium, either in the room or on Zoom? All right. No? Okay. So with that, we will close our public forum and we will move on to our next item of business, which is our unfinished business. We have none, so we'll move on to our new business, and that is our NDA with Tigard Water Services. And I'll assume Mike, you taking this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So with any sort of water supply, there's some confidential information for supply in case of disruption with the system or something like that to avoid any of that. So the non-disclosure agreement is so that we can gain access to the water network so that we can plan accordingly with our engineers and start the comprehensive planning of our own water network with the City of Tigard Water District. Cautionary take here is that that also binds all of you and any planning commissioners or anyone that would be privy to the information that would then need to be shared in an executive session due to the non-disclosure agreement. Basically, it's a situation where we can't talk about what we learn, right? And we can't share or discuss any of the confidentiality of it. But in order for us to do our planning, we need to execute the non-disclosure agreement So this was my opportunity to bring it to you for one, asking for authorization to sign the non-disclosure agreement, and two, giving you a heads up that once we do, we cannot talk about it or share the information garnered from that.
Right.
If we do, we'd be subject to lawsuit and potentially sued.
Correct. I think what would be helpful, because it's a high exposure endeavor and the consequences of breaching an NDA in particularly a situation like this. Personally, I don't see a way around not entering it. I think we have to, but I think some overview or training in an executive session so that everyone really understands, what it entails, because there's going to be opportunities that it can easily come up, and so I think maybe a little bit of training on how to navigate it, how to spot it, so you don't, if you don't readily work in the litigation world, right, it's sometimes easy to, kind of fall into conversations without even really knowing it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, should I not have said that? And you're already in breach once you have. So I think my feeling on it would be, right, it sounds like a good opportunity for an executive session to kind of just go through it and, and really understand the parameters of what can be discussed, right? Because, and there's going to be some, right, simply mentioning some things are going to be okay, but, in-depth sharing of information is not. And so until, right.
That's my biggest concern, is that we're going to get some of this information we're going to share it with our planning commissioner or city councilors in executive session, and if it finds its way out, then
right.
So we can kind of avoid that by working behind the scenes with just the staff that are and consultants that are on this, and then basically bring the non-confidential information forward of meeting. But I think we're going to have to be really careful, because if anything gets out, then
right. No, I absolutely agree. So what do you need from us tonight? Do you need us to provide authority to go forward? Do you need parameters of what that authority is? What just
you have the non-disclosure agreement in front of you. I need authorization to execute the non-disclosure agreement with the city of Tigard and our consultant, so that information, the confidential information, can be shared amongst those parties.
Okay. Anyone else have questions, comments?
I'm just going to go ahead and move that we grant our city manager the authority to sign the non-disclosure agreement with City of Tigard.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Shauna or Smart, do either of you have any discussion? It's been moved and seconded that we direct Mike.
No, I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay.
No, I don't have anything. Thank
Smart.
you.
All right. All right. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Thanks.
All right. All right. It has been approved unanimously. Thank you. Moving on. Let's see. We're going to move on to, why don't Mike, Chief. Yeah, why don't we, Mike, Chief, you ready for your report? You need a few minutes. You want us to?
We're missing them out.
I can move to have, put you after Mike if you want.
We're good. It's pretty short.
All right.
Pretty short.
All right. Take it away.
So we're into kind of doing some speed studies. We're in the most complained about area, which is the south and to the west, and currently have speed sign up on Southwest Macbeth information that I looked at here recently is on 36 hours, 383 vehicles on that road. The average speed is 12.6.
It's a hard road to speed on.
What's that?
It's a hard road to speed on.
Yeah, and stuff. So, you know, we just go out there and we try to do that. So, and then our next move will be towards Fisher, and 136 will be in that area. We've been pretty heavy with our traffic enforcement. Fisher and 131st, I know the intersection was worked pretty hard this weekend. Several people were cited.
Yeah, you made next door.
I heard you also caught the muffler bandit.
Oh, the muffler guy, the most complained about car on Beef Bend Road. Yeah, he was cited last weekend. So the people who, I mean, I know the Highlands and everything like that, and if anybody didn't know, it was programmed to basically backfire, so it sounds like gunshots going off. And so that was taken care of with that. We hope. So yeah, so we've just been kind of working that into town. So tell everybody, hey, we are working intersections, we're working speed. Watch your speed. It's easy to speed on those two roads, we understand, but you know, there is speed. Lexipol, so that's our policy manual that is currently ongoing. We are now into actually doing approvals of policies, and it is a long road. You know, I was hoping 4 to 6 months we'd have. Hopefully we can do that. You can actually just get so bogged down in the minutia of what is in there and have to look into things, and we try to match our policies as close to the agencies that are around us, and you start to find out that there are a lot of stuff, and so it's just kind of a slow roll. Push out to the officers is, I've decided it will be when we're about 75% complete with that, and then we just start slowly rolling it out in blocks of 10 to 20 at a time, and then you know, implement that. I don't have anything else as far as info that I can remember, and a question or two that we can go ahead with. I'll take your question.
Thank you. So one of the big takeaways, I think most of the counselors attended the meeting on the 11th, and one of the big takeaways, amongst a lot of other comments and frustration and upset and anger, was concern about traffic speeding, right? And we don't need to wait for our master planning or our transportation system plan to kind of deal with those concerns. Those are safety has always been the top priority of this council. It remains the top priority. And so I heard a lot of people, you know, frustrated with speeding on Fisher Road, frustrated with speeding within Edgewater. So I reached out to Chief following the meeting to kind of talk about, you know, what are some of our options that are out there, right? Can we put up a automatic, you know, ticketing sign like they have at the intersections, right? A camera and that, right? Can we do something like that? And my understanding is that no.
And that's a legislative decision that has to be made. You have to, you know, basically go down and ask permission from the state of Oregon to be able to do that. And then you also then have to have, say, like the number one company is called Red Flex. I think they're out of Arizona. So that would be the companies that do the 3 red lights for Tigard. And they do traffic studies, and they basically look at it and say, is it worth our money to invest in this? And, you know, quite frankly, we don't have the traffic there to where that also boils into the speed bands, you know, that are along the same line. So anything that has to do with photo radar. And so it's frustrating, you know, and that, yeah, obviously it's the number one complaint that in the city is the speed. And so, you know, we run into a lot of perception issues. That's why I like to throw the speed sign out, because it captures every vehicle that passes it, and then I get data sheets, which I'll have for you for the next meeting. And so it just tells you the number of cars, the hours that they're traveling, the speed that each one's traveling. And so you start to get an idea of, okay, what are the hours that we have speeders or we don't. And so it just provides a data point that then we'll be able to give to Ronnie will be able to put that up on a display, a heat map, or whatever it's going to be. And then we'll also have citation numbers as well of officers out working.
And so it gives you an idea of, do we have an issue? There's roads that, hey, Fisher Road and 131st, people going too fast. And so we try to get that as much as we can. It's a lot more aggressive out there and a little bit more on the offense as far as going out and working, the speeders in before we stop there. And so it's just going through it. Unfortunately, we're small. We have officer on a shift, and so we get called away to other calls, and it pulls away from the enforcement issue on it. And so, because I did take a proactive step a while ago. I'm surprised you didn't know. I've got 2 motorcycles that are sitting in the garage out there, and so it's a matter of when we get staffed up enough that where we can send people to motor schools, so then we have the motor officers that can run around and that can be way more proactive, because that's what they do. And so we're hoping that can happen. We hope that, if we're able to pull our section of 99, it helps it, happen a little bit more. And so it's just a matter of just going out there. There's other options that are available too. I'd have to talk to the traffic sergeants with the local areas where they can come out and they do what's just basically a mass saturation of an area, where you could sit there and say, all right, we've got, county's got their speed sign also on Fisher. I don't know if it's capturing data, so I'd be interested in their data to see what they have as far as, time, and if it's something to where we could get the motors out here to, run a saturation, and we advertise it. I'm all for letting people know, hey, we put it out there.
Yeah.
Whether it's on social media, it's in print, whatever it's going to be, to be able to sit there and say it's kind of like working a crosswalk, saturation. And so that's another option that are available. So there's a few things, and there's, like I said, they've got their kind of their permanent sign set up. I've got mine that I can move. I have to have a post in order to mount it and stuff, and I had to have the post repaired on Macbeth before I could mount it out there. And so, as long as we have those, we can definitely kind of keep up. The bad thing about it is that I keep getting alerts on my phone that the battery's running out on the one out there. And so it's something that I have to charge and then bring it back out on like the solar one that's out there. And it might be something one of these days that we can do.
Yeah, right. That'd be great. Yeah.
But, that little sign, that's a $7,000 sign.
Right.
Right. So it's just an expensive thing. But the data that it provides, especially for somebody that's a data guy like Ronnie, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And, everything basically is all done for us. But, so there are options that are available. It's just, as we get to it, as we become fully staffed, as Kevin gets out into, hopefully on his role, where we have our guys and gals will actually be our 2 senior people, be on day shift to be able to work the school zones and be able to work these areas. It'll be better.
Yeah. And we do, I think, it's important that the public knows, we do, right, you've presented numerous times on the traffic studies throughout the city, every couple of months you bring us that data. And I think the perception of speeding doesn't always align. And I think part of that issue is when you're standing stationary and a car is going past at 20, it actually feels like it's going really fast. And it isn't necessarily speeding. Now, that's not to say we don't have speeding. We obviously have speeding. The reality of up to this point, all the data has shown is that it's our neighbors, right? It's people living in King City who are speeding. But my understanding is that kind of traditionally we've kind of given warnings, right? Because we don't, right? If we start ticketing too much, we get huge complaint volume from residents thinking that, we are, taxing or quotaing our own residents to fill some, that we're ticketing to fill some kind of quota. I personally, and this is what I shared with you, right? I personally think that it is just time for us to take away the warning. I think we turn Fisher Road and 131 into a speed trap, try to deter, right, a little bit of those. I think we do a big blast of social media saying, right, hey, we're going to really start hammering. If you're speeding, you're going to get a ticket, and that's it. And but before we go down that road, because we know that it's going to be our own residents who are going to be ticketed, I would like some data, right? I think it's important that we do that. But I also think the concern over the speeding is very valid, and right, we know there's some cut throughs. We also know people are just kind of speeding to get there. I would kind of like to really, rather than take everyone's word for it, I would like to see some of that data. So
and that's the thing, you got to look at those two roads are designed for higher speeds than what are currently posted on it, right? And so you get out there where you see roads like 131st and Fisher that are probably, should have been a minimum of 35, and we've gotten them reduced to 25. And so, there's some other questions we need to answer, right?
As a rule follower, right? Like but I will say, I when I first moved in 2012, I will say, Brian caught, I was going too fast on Fisher Road because it was like the day after I moved in from, right? And I did get a ticket. I will admit that. Yeah.
31st, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, we have, it's a
I understand, yeah.
there and stuff. It's just speed enforcement, it's not traps that are out there.
Right.
And stuff, so we just work on, we work on that. And so it's something that, we do ticket egregious speeders.
Right.
And stuff. And so, yes, is there an educational aspect to traffic stops? Most certainly. And so it's not something that we're out writing 20 tickets a day, because that just doesn't happen. And so it's, it's a handful a week, it's maybe double digit, low double digits in the teens.
Right.
They get ridden in a week at the most. And so it's something that, we just do the educational things, being seen, letting people know, hey, here's an issue. But after I get done with Fisher, I'll probably post it on 131st, and we'll get some downhill speed, which it'll be up there. It was in the last one,
right,
and stuff. And so it's just, I mean, even before the islands were put in, I mean, that's basically big enough to be a 4-lane road. So,
right.
And so there's.
And those islands, it really helped. People would.
Honestly, there's questions to be asked and answered about a true speed study for those two roads. Does it require the speed staying what it is, or does it need to be popped up?
There's nothing, you can go from Deer Creek.
I'm just being realistic.
No, we don't know. We don't need to go down that road right now. Anyway, that would be one thing. I'm also, at the roundabout in Fisher. I mean, the roundabout in Edgewater. I might not agree with certain residents' tactics, but the underlying message I think is valid. At the crosswalk at the roundabout, is there any way to get some more reflective, like what can we do for visibility? Because I am hearing that coming in, there are still, and we know a few of them we've identified some of our more teenager drivers, right? We kind of know some of our residents who need some more education. But for the concern is for drivers coming into the roundabout too fast, right, and not seeing the crossers. Is there anything that we can do with that at the crosswalks to add a little visibility, like reflector lights or flashy lights, or?
I think there's what looks like it's 3D. You do the black underneath and the white.
And that's a little out of my lane, but there is always something that can be done.
Okay.
A matter of getting the money or the crew to be
right.
able to do the signs.
Right, sure.
Because the electronic signs are awesome.
Right.
And they definitely grab your attention. The LED lights, when they start blasting
right.
and stuff like that, are good. I mean, there could be things, as simple as a sign that flashes when a car is approaching,
right.
like the stop sign. That, hey, you're approaching.
Get your attention.
Right.
Stuff like that. That stuff is out there. It's just a matter of we have to look at it, we have to see how much it costs, if it's something that we can do.
I think, and I could be mistaken, but I think there's language in the transportation system plan for signaling at some of the roundabouts, especially along the primary east-west, to address those kind of safety concerns. So those would be projects that could potentially receive funding, TDT funding, that sort of thing. But again, TDT is only for collectors, so you have those struggles. So, but that's in the TST, I believe, to put those signal warrants on, especially along the primary east-west.
Like too, if we get into flashy lights, we have to think about the residents that live around there, right? You know, you're going off at 1 or 2 in the morning and it hits their bedroom window.
Sure, right. Well, that's why, like, you know, they have some of the ones, I'm thinking like, you know, we're on the crosswalk on the ground, that or some,
Like
We can get the turtlebacks probably.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking, you know, anyway, what I think would be helpful is you collect a little more data. We put an item on the agenda to have, you know, one, you know, when you have our data next month or the following month, and then we can kind of have a little more conversation about, you know, is the data showing that we need to do something in between now and, you know, TSB funding down the road, or, right?
The strips that are down, the laminate strips that are on there are supposed to be reflective.
Yeah, they're not very reflective. I think
they're faded.
They're not like, yeah. Well, I mean, they just, yeah. And you know, and plus, I mean, this is always a good time, you know, with Halloween coming, kids crossing the street and it getting dark. I mean, I just think that,
I think there might be enough like ambient street light that the reflectiveness isn't really effective.
That might be it.
Yeah.
Because there's lights around.
Yeah. So like
those acorn lights are not the Cobra, it's really bright.
right. Yeah, no, they're the kind of yellowy duller ones. Anyway, so I think let's, you know, it's hard, you know, let's see what your data is showing. And then in the meantime, Mike, like, you know, if there's a real cheap, good reflective option that you could bring to us so that we can talk about it later, something that isn't going to take a huge grant. It is shocking how expensive some of this stuff is, though, right? And then, Chief, I'd be real curious on Washington County if they have data. So that would be interesting. If not, then I think we should invite them to come in and do something.
I tried to look at that today, and I just don't know if it's the charging pack that the solar panel charges.
Right.
It's what's on the ground. I'm not sure and stuff to see if that now. So I would have to. Do you talk to the League team much? I'm sure it's in I can find out.
I will tell you at the League of Oregon Cities conference that I'll talk about in a minute. It was amazing. The traffic signaling and some of that safety stuff. I was like, I super geeked out in the vendor forum to learn about some of that stuff. It was so cool. So it's super cool. Yeah. I needed about $500 million and I would have bought everything we could have possibly wanted in King City. So,
Was there like a raffle?
I wish, right? Yeah, right. But so many cool stuff. And then the all-inclusive playgrounds. Anyway. All right. Any questions for the chief? Councilor Thompson, Councilor Otoli, any questions for the chief before we move on to Mike's report?
Nope, none from me. Thanks.
No, I don't have any.
Mike, thanks, Mark. Sorry. I got to remember to leave a little delay time.
All right, I don't have too much. Most of you were at the open house on October 11th, so you're aware of the majority of the bold conversation from Rivermead community and others was opposition to the extension of Fisher across and through. Predominantly, I think that was resounded throughout. There was a few others that came in with other concerns about Fisher Road at Queen Anne or at the intersection at 99W and what that was going to do. There were a couple people that actually wanted to lower. There were 2 people I recall that mentioned that they wanted a lower route. One mentioned snow problems getting up on Deep End, and other mentioned access from east to west, town center sort of thing. But predominantly, I think most people were opposed to it. And, you know, I think we need to do a better job of getting the cross section so people kind of can envision what we're talking about, because I think that there's still a misconception about the profile of the road through there that we're talking about, or what kind of traffic and impacts we're really talking about. I know that modeling data and change can be really scary, and we don't know until it's there, I think, and so there's a lot of information that we just don't have yet, and we don't know, and I would love to look into the future 20 years and see what it actually looks like and bring back a picture and say, here it is, or make that decision, but I just don't have that capability right now, other than just trying to analyze the modeling data and do what we can do. And I that to the consultants for the most part to sort through all that. We were awarded the Metro Trails grant for the West Side Trail Segment 1. It will go from the bridgehead to Beef Bend and look at that intersection. We still have some scoping that we need to do along that stretch to determine the exact scope that we might be able to accomplish with the money that was awarded. Again, the total value is $364,000, $200,000 from Metro, $164,000 match from us. Not a great match, but hopefully it gets us down the design road to at least be permitting and shovel ready, hopefully, for the next round of state or federal grants for that particular item. The ODOT grant is turning into a little onerous element for us on doing the trail segment because they want the wetland delineations and a bunch of other elements that, site surveys and wetland delineations and things that we don't necessarily have. That's what we would need the planning money for. And so that's kind of running into a bit of a barrier. But there's a round of Oregon Marine Board grants coming out, and I think we have a unique opportunity there to see about going for some Marine Board grants for water access. And doesn't necessarily have to be motorized or but we could do river access for paddlers or just our residents, put a fishing dock out there, something to that effect, I think there's room out there. I was down there this morning with Mark, his last name right now is slipping my mind, but it starts with an F, from Walton River Keepers, and we were talking about possible funding sources out there from soil and water conservation groups, OWEB, Oregon Marine Board, some of these other groups that actually deal with that, and maybe if we can figure out a way to tie it into the Metro Trails grant, some matching funds for some of that design work for the bridgehead and river access. There's ways that we can augment and hopefully get something really nice and a nice access point for our residents down there.
There's a lot of fishing grants too. I mean, there's a ton of money, weirdly, when we've looked at this a lot. But I mean, there's a lot of really good funding. It's just fractured. Like there's a lot of funding out there, but it's like we have to pull from absolutely everyone to make it worth it because it's so expensive.
That's the challenge is bringing all of those together.
Yeah.
And I think Mark and Walton River Keepers have a really good grasp on what funding's out there.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be a great resource. Working with them is a great resource to get that river access. We are really fortunate on the leg of river that we're in because we don't really have any really shallow areas. I mean, it's not that deep, but it's not that shallow until you get up near the bridge by Cook Park. And so you have a really great stretch of river from King City west and north there for quite a stretch.
So we got to get river access because while I love that some of our quote vandalism in King City is the building of a little dock and some stairs down to the river, and the non-lawyer, non-mayor side of me just thinks that is wonderful. officially, it's problematic, and it's problematic for a lot of different reasons. And one of the reasons is, right, we know that accessing down to the river right now, the way that people are accessing it, is causing further damage to erosion. It's already a very vulnerable area because of all the bull mound runoff and all the erosions that we've already seen. And so, you know, the only way that we're going to be able to do some rehabilitation here is to, you know, make good access and get people, you know, get some right money and get as part of that build, right? It's restoration work and trail work. I mean, that's our goal, right? So we've been talking about it for a long time. I'm excited that, you know, it was great. We went to Metro and accepted you know, we were there during the presentation. Mike and I had a heart attack because we thought we were going to be put on the spot to do a speech in the middle of the presentation, but luckily, someone had already written kind of up King City, so that was good. But it was nice. It was nice to be kind of recognized, and I will say that Metro's really excited that right that we're coming in and we're the very tail end of the trail, and it's wonderful. So
yeah,
great.
I think if the bridge across to Heritage Pine has a landing spot and we can get federal funding to tie those together, that's a huge shot for the whole region, not just King City residents, but the whole region. And I don't know if it'll happen in the near future, but I mean, that's a pretty big problem.
In 50 years, right? In 50, I mean, right? I mean, right? We're setting into motion now right, to be able to responsibly, right, access the wildlife reserve and and I mean, eventually the river is going to be rehabilitated, right? It's going to take hundreds of millions of dollars, and every city that is here from, right, the entire length of the river. So,
but I guess the conversation started about how we might be able to address the erosion on, you know, the Deer Creek outfall there.
Right.
And then we were trying to figure out how we might be able to potentially tie that into like a river access with ADA. Going out there and looking at it with Mark and judging, it's really far away. Deer Creek outfall is pretty far away from where the river access would be, and so tying an OWEB grant to that, it's going to be a bit of a stretch. But there's other funds out there I think that maybe we can work with or go for other pots of money, but it's going to be a challenge. Sure. But anyways, so that leads into the next one. I suppose the transportation system plan, which also has trails in there as well, the bridge being part of it, as well as the Greenway Trail along the Walton River on our side, from 99W all the way out to, you know, I call it the Metro Thumb, down on the far end near Elsner, and the 1210 Wildlife Refuge. So the draft plan is out. We have it on the King City webpage, the TSP, and I believe there's a copy on the master plan website as well. I already talked about the open house a little bit. The alternative analysis draft is out. We've just covered that during the work session. We covered it, the presentation at the open house. The next round of engagement is tentatively scheduled for November. And hopefully with that, we'll have components of the master plan pulled together, like the land use components and financial pieces and infrastructure hubs, those sort of elements, and hopefully start bringing a plan together. Let's see, street construction, Carmel, Camino, Monterey, I've checked out all those. Ronnie assures me that Queen Anne is done too. And if so, that means that they're all done. I haven't seen Queen Anne yet, but I'll have to go by there and check it out. Garden Villa was an interesting one this last month. We had a sewer line failure and double clog on one of the private lines up across Morocco on Monaco. So Monaco, at the corner of Monaco and Morocco, is a line that has a break and a double clog, and we believe it was tree roots that had made their way in there. When the resident was trying to jet out the clog, it was creating backflow problems in at least 5 of the residents south of Morocco. So we aren't 100% sure if we were able to blow a hole through there as a temporary fix, but we know that there's a break in the line as well. So now we are trying to figure out what to do with that.
Yeah.
And not in my court or the city's court necessarily. We're kind of this intermediary between Clean Water Services and the residents, and you know, it is in the public. Part of it is in the public right of way. So there's some elements there, and we've been trying to look for some creative.
Yeah. And Clean Water Services they're kind of trying to figure out what they can do, how to help. They're kind of really thinking outside the box. I mean, we knew this is a very unfortunate situation because a lot of effort several years ago went into trying to avoid exactly this situation, and through some misunderstanding and fear and candidly just some poor, I think, advice that some residents got, there was kind of a suspicion as to what, you know, Clean Water Services and the city and everyone was trying to do to exactly address this. And so they didn't take advantage of Clean Water Services offer back several years ago to kind of investigate the lines and look at them and all of that. And now, unfortunately, what we feared has in fact transpired. So I guess you'll just keep us posted as to what Clean Water Services is going to kind of come up with, see how they can help the residents, because I sure feel for them. I mean, that's a terrible, you know.
They sent out a couple of options, I think, where, but none of them are easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to be expensive.
I think everybody's walking on eggshells too because of the lawsuit.
Yeah. I don't know if everyone kind of recalls, but there was kind of a lawsuit, and then it was dismissed, and it's just a real unfortunate situation. So we will we'll just kind of keep observing and let us know what happens.
And I'll bounce to my final point final item of the night, which was transportation growth management, type 1 application for design funding on East hopefully get to about 10%. TGM grants of this nature usually range from 100 to 150,000. They're not big money, but it is probably enough to at least figure out a coordinated effort or approach with Washington County, Tigard, and King City on what's East Bend going to look like. Is it going to look like Mount Washington sort of boulevard like out of Bend, where it's essentially separated with traffic circles, or are traffic circles not allowed, or what's the street profile look like, where are the intersections facing, where do we put safe crossings, all those elements. Hopefully we can get some public engagement on, discussions going on what kind of design we'd like to envision East Bend for. Part of our conversation the other day with Washington County and ODOT was kind of what the cross-section of East Bend looks like. And if anyone's been to Bend, I don't know if you come off of like Reed Market Road and taking that down toward the Old Mill District or whatever else. That is basically Mount Washington Boulevard as it goes along the river there, and then goes up the other side near Safeway and Eastern Oregon Community College, I think. Or
Would like Barrows be a similar one to that? With that roundabout, you know, at the end, over by Progress Ridge?
Possibly, I think Barrows is.
I think it's hard, like, we need some pictures, yeah.
Terrace only has like one roundabout.
Right.
This would be, figuring out what those intersection spacing look like. So, you know, our consultants, Keith, and well, our planners, our urban planners, they want lots of intersections, right? Lots of signalized crossings and things of that nature. But then you have agencies like Washington County who's looking at the utility and flow of traffic, and they have benchmarks and modeling data, and they want to hit those. And so they don't want to allow anything to connect to Beach Bend short of a collector street at a minimum spacing of 600 feet is their standard. And so the idea here would be to take a look at that and identify based on population estimates and growth estimates on how many intersections are going to be necessary and what's the spacing on those intersections, what type of intersections we're looking at, what type of road design cross section, and whether, like I was mentioning earlier, whether the houses are going to front on Beach Bend or whether they're going to turn away. I think our goal in the concept plan is to make it pedestrian friendly and neighborhood friendly, so we prefer to have those houses fronting onto Beach Bend, and so that there's that physical interaction with the people in the neighborhood, and so it doesn't look like we're turning our back on one another. So those are kind of the concepts and designs that are built into the concept plans that are kind of carrying forward. But the TGM grant has a 12% match, which is, it's a great match for us because typically that's staff time that we put in toward it. And that all counts toward our match. So, but we are going to try to put a letter together requesting that money and try to get that out the door over the next month.
Great. Anything else? I'm going to start with Councilor Thompson and Councilor Acholi. Any questions for Mike?
None from me. Thank you.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mike in the room? All right, we will move on to council report. So we will start with Councilor Thompson.
Hi.
She's on mute. Hi.
I'll make mine pretty short. I just want to start off by thanking Councilor Petrie for joining me in endorsing Measure 114, the Reduction of Gun Violence Act. And I would just like to encourage each of you, if you haven't already, I haven't seen your name on the website, but it's possible they're behind. But I'd encourage each of you to personally endorse this really important measure as well, just to keep our community safer. You'll be joined by Jeff Merkley has endorsed it, Courtney Neuron has endorsed it, Tina Kotek, Margaret Doherty, just to name a few. But like I said, I just want to personally thank Councilor Petrie for joining me in endorsing this important measure. That's all for me.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Acholi.
Yes, Jamie. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, so sorry, I'm not able to be there in person as well. Just a few things that came up last minute. Sorry about that. But great discussions tonight and great great updates and everything. So really appreciate the opportunity to join from virtual location. I just have one thing to share. I was at the water board meeting. So the meeting for this time had a presentation that was made to the group by the Clackamas River Water Resilience Project that was conducted with PSU. And the goal was just to look at the impact of global warming on water and in the future, how much of an impact that will be And we all know with the fires and everything going on every now and then, every year, there's always going to be some type of impact. And we've seen it this year with the snow caps not staying as long as they used to. And this time the rains did not come in early. And so those are kind of the things that are being studied right now to see what impact it will be down in the future to water supply, water usage, and things like that. So a lot of it is just tied to really get to the point where we'll have to like kind of start doing like what is going on in California now, having people maybe turn down how much water they use for irrigation or plants like Intel and other places that use a lot of water. What type of measures will need to be put in place? Will it start with voluntary kind of people not kind of watering their lawns and setting days, or some type of measure that will be put in place just to help with to address the climate change that's kind of impacting a lot of things around us today. I think it was a very interesting presentation because, again, even though we do have alternative options to getting water from around us, but again, by the time everyone starts getting the same impact and we all kind of start falling on the same kind of solution to the problem, it becomes a bigger problem for everyone. So again, more to come on this study. The goal is just to see how and what we can do in the future as we get into the future. And the climate change is something that we everyone is trying and working hard to minimize. But again, the reality is it's happening. So we just need to be prepared, and that's what the study is looking into. Other than that, everything is going on well regarding the water levels, and again tied to the rains not coming in early, but now the forecast is showing that the rains will be coming in over the next few days or so. And so hopefully that will take care of any concerns or any issues regarding water and water usage, water river flow and everything else. So that's all I had from that meeting. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or if Mike, if you got anything besides what I have.
I think, anyone have any questions? I guess for Smart or for Shauna, I didn't, but no, thank you guys for that. And we'll start, Councilor Petrie.
Good evening, everybody. So I just wanted to report on the meetings that I've attended in the last month. First, I was at the end of last month, I attended the MPAC meeting, which is the Metro Policy Advisory Committee. First up was in their ongoing discussion of factors of homelessness presentations. There was a discussion focused on the ideas for a regional winter shelter response across the region, and it was suggested to start with warming centers. The need is for folks to manage these and other shelters, and Metro staff have advised that they have been able to certify providers that can work in all Metro areas. So the commentary from the committee was that they were hoping that there would be increased communication about these resources so all of us could learn about it. The second topic for the meeting was progress report concerning the UGB exchange request from Tigard, so the River Terrace 2.0. Metro staff have identified several parcels of land and are talking with various jurisdictions. The question was raised on whether the equivalent parcels, the equivalent between what Tigard wants and what would come out of UGB that they want to bring in, would these parcels need to be contiguous or not? So that's the conversation they're still having. Staff recommendation is due this month, and there will be a public comment period after that. MPAC will be asked to consider endorsing the recommendation later this year, and then the question will go to Metro Council. So this probably sounds like might be resolved by the end of this year.
I think it's out. The COO recommendation's out.
Right, it was supposed to be due just anytime.
She gave like 3 different options.
Oh, cool.
On it.
Okay, great. I'll be sure I'll be hearing at the MPAC meeting in another week or two. So then King City Condos, I attended their meeting. At that meeting, they introduced their new management company, which is Shamrock Community Management. King City Condos is continuing to work on their water issues, numerous water issues, including addressing leaks, drainage issues, valve replacements, et cetera. Actually, Mike and I went over and talked to them about a couple of things that we're trying to help them out on. So, and for them, I want to just take a moment to commend them for facing their issues head on and doing the hard work of prioritizing and planning solutions, something we all know is not easy to do. And then finally, King City Garden Villas, they are just had a very simple short meeting, and they are getting ready to plan their yearly roofing gutter cleaning. It's that time of year.
Right.
And that's it for me.
Cool. Thank you. Councilor Norris.
Yeah, not much. Attended the open house, a week or so ago. Thank you everyone for coming out. It was very well attended. Got a lot of information from that. Nothing else. I know I sent you an email about email.
Yes. So I asked, remind me, I forwarded it to you guys, and I asked to put the item of the email on the agenda, and we said we could do it during staff or during council presentations. And so here is your time to address. We decided not to put it as an agenda item, but rather have you bring it up now.
So I emailed Mayor Fender about our email system, because just getting all of these draft documents, I think I'm at about 98%.
Yep.
Keep deleting things, and it only goes down about 1% or 2%. So we're going to run out of email, and we're just not going to be. I'm not going to be able to get any communication, and so I think that will become an issue, especially going forward with the master planning process. I did kind of briefly looked into Google. They have like this government sector that they, so it's like Gmail and YouTube, and even all that cloud based. So all of documentation can be shared, and it's all through their secure. So about as far as I got into it, but I think we should explore some options on getting more storage.
I have to. Well, what I will say is the way that we do our email right now is not the most user-friendly.
Right.
It is.
I can't pull my email up in here on my tablet.
Yeah.
On this Wi-Fi.
I have to connect remotely still through my email. I don't get it on my phone. I have to go through the server, which I have bookmarked, but it is a little clunky. And so I guess the question is, what will it take to look into, give us the nitty gritty about our email. Do we have the system we have because it's the cheapest, or because it's the one we have, or is it because it's just too difficult to change? Like what's the?
So expensive, and it's based on, our retention requirements.
Right. Oh yeah, we got it.
And leads and all this jazz that we have to do for secure access.
But can we move our email? I get all the stuff.
You're running out of space.
Yeah, I run out of space all the time. It is.
Is that something you can explain to Jen? So right now, because I knew this was kind of coming.
Yeah.
So Jeremy and I talked a little bit about certain things. So Google does not meet state of Oregon led security. Cities that are using in the state of Oregon should not be using it. But there's workarounds with that. But talk to him. He would like to come talk to you guys in November.
Okay.
Can you explain the storage thing?
I don't know what's going on with the storage thing, because I did talk to him about it. He goes, they have plenty of storage, so I don't know, maybe it's a device issue. So I think that he wants to come in and talk to you guys face to face. I don't think he's ever done that since I've been here.
How would it be a device issue if it's stored on? It's not stored locally on our.
I don't know.
It's on their server. I mean.
No, on that one.
The
only other thing that I do know is council is POP now. We are different than POP.
You're SMTP?
I think we're
SMTP.
I know.
Oh, IMAX. Okay.
Maybe that's the difference.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Okay.
But I will let Jared.
Something is going wrong. Like something is not efficient that we need to undo it.
Yeah. So
mine doesn't.
So that's the difference.
You have the specials. You guys have the specials. We have the. Yeah.
So why would they separate it? Like, that's what we need. We need him here, right? We can pepper him with the questions. Yeah.
Okay.
It has to do with clearance because you can't be on our firewall. You have
Right.
to be separate than our firewall.
Right.
So, but I'm gonna let Jeremy come in and talk about it because he knows more about it than I do on the back end.
Sure.
So then we will look forward to talking to him
Yeah.
in November or December, whenever our next one is.
Should we bring our devices and have, should we do a quick like work session, instead of at 5:30 or?
I'm just going to spitball here, but I'm going to suggest that there's some access elements to your iPads that have been like throttled back, due to the risk or nature to jumping on our server from an outside or whatever else it is. So it might just be an authorities thing that, he has, administrator authorities that you can go and just click a couple boxes and get you the authority that you need to do what you need to do on your
I
iPad.
think that should be on our agenda. I think it's like come with your devices at 5:30.
Yeah, can we do that at 5:30 and we can do a technology work session. People can watch us if they want to make sure we don't do anything. We're at 5, yeah.
How long do you think well, we need to talk to him about how long.
And then like people can
Bring in our stuff, yeah.
I'm good. Well, depends on what you guys are gonna talk about. He was gonna talk about Google options too. There's a workaway around that, but he knows more way back. He knows. I don't even understand.
Right, I think we're talking about two different things, right?
I think we are. I think,
Here, but the other one is we're not gonna be able to get emailed probably, if another large document comes through, it's gonna.
Why don't we have him come? We will come, let's have him come at like 5:30. He doesn't need to prepare alternatives and workarounds for us to present right now, because I think the biggest issue is access right now. So why don't we bring anyone who is having issue, bring your device, and we will meet with him before the next council meeting. And then if we discover that there's something that right, like if we need to discuss more after we fix whatever is going on currently, or we discover we can't fix it, then we can set it for an agenda item and talk about what else is out there and all of that. Does that sound fair? Okay, perfect.
IT.
Just IT. All right. Okay, cool. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. I am going to go very quickly. I have done so much in the last month. So here we go. Here's all the things that I have done. I tried very hard, and this is also for our residents who might be listening in or watching later, is the place that I keep all of the information of what I'm doing and all of that is on my Facebook page, my mayor's Facebook page. I forgot to mention that at the public meeting the other night. That is the most up-to-date and best information if you want to know what I'm up to. So I met with Kevin Barton. I meet with Kevin Barton periodically to talk about all things criminal justice. So we had a great meeting. That was wonderful. I attended the American Legion and Washington County Disability Aging Veterans showed a documentary called Project 22 about veteran suicide prevention and some of the most kind of up-to-date and state-of-the-art ways of trying to help veterans who are suffering from PPS. Part of that, I also talked to the Washington County Aging and Disability Aging Veterans coordinator about, I would love next year during September, which is Veteran Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, I would love to do an event down at our park, maybe like a 22 lap kind of community walk, jog, run-a-thon to raise awareness. And the number 22 is significant because that is how many veterans commit suicide a day. We think the number is much higher than that. It's a shocking number and it's a preventable number. And so I would really love to highlight that. I also talked, my biggest concern for our veterans in King City, we have a lot of services and support agencies out there for our more senior veterans, kind of our Vietnam era veteran and above, that generation tends to join like the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, those kind of service-oriented groups. But it's our war on terror, it's our Iraq and Afghanistan veterans who, due to lots of different reasons, tend not to join those groups. And so we have a lot of younger veterans here in King City who we know are kind of suffering, are without, supportive systems and so forth. So I really love to do that. So we're going to kind of continue on that, and I will bring something back here when I have a little something more formalized. But it was a great conversation. I attended the Mobility Impaired Golf Association event at the King City Golf Course. It was phenomenal. So we have a nonprofit here in King City, and they love to bring the game of golf to kids who have mobility impairment issues. So Dornbeckers, Shriners Hospital, and some other organizations had kids that came to the golf course. Then there was a golf tournament for adults. I did a lot of putting with lots of kids, and it was phenomenal. And there was a pizza thing. Next year, I'd love to highlight it a bit more. I will be candid and tell you that I heard about it kind of last minute. And so I hope next year we will hear about it sooner. And now that we're kind of connected in with them and we know that they're here, so that everyone can come and enjoy that, because it was a phenomenal event, and I super loved it. So I attended a Women in Leadership event at the Governor's Mansion in Salem, which was great, and got to catch up with a lot of other women leaders around the country. One thing, I don't know if you guys have heard, but TTSD received a PGE grant to get electric buses. So you'll start seeing in the next year cool new electric buses for our schools, and that's super exciting. And I believe one of those is going to go to Deer Creek, so fun. Mike and I, we were talking about that. We went to Metro to do our acceptance of the trail grant, which was great. I want to highlight that the 50th Portland Marathon was this month, and a King City resident won her age group. I put that on Facebook. If most people know Ashley DeSano, she is a well-known runner. She also was just featured in today's Parent magazine for a viral post that she had on Instagram. It went viral, so that it was funny. You can follow her on Instagram. I got to talk about King City with Adam Schiff, which was fun. I went to a Andrea Salinas event, and we talked about kind of all things local government. I attended the 97th LOC conference in Bend. It was a great conference. I spent one of the days in DEI training, and that was fun. There's a couple other cities that are doing some really interesting stuff. So I'm going to go and take some tours with some other mayors and learn about some of the things that they're doing and come back and share that with you guys. I went to the Gathering of Hope, which was, as Rachel talked tonight. So the Gathering of Hope brought out, it was kind of a acknowledgement and celebration of the work that they're doing in the community. There was vendors out there kind of giving information about some of the services. I met a ton of really great organizations. One of them is an organization that provides sign language interpretation, and I want to set up a conversation with them to come do some stuff for us and learn about a little bit more about what they do, because I think up until this point, we don't have any kind of sign language interpretation that we're providing, and we certainly probably have a need in the community. So at some point, hopefully we can have them come and do a presentation or find out how they can kind of assist us in some better practices. It was fun. Roy Rogers was at the Gathering Hope, so he and I got to sit and have lunch together and kind of talk about all things King City, which is always fun. I attended the Tualatin Regatta, the Great West Pumpkin Regatta. And surprisingly, my cousin was there, and she won. She won her heat, which was like a surprise. Like, we were standing in line for pizza, and then I looked up and she was right next to us, and then she was in a costume and she said, "Oh, I'm about to win." So that was very fun. And then last night, or the night before actually, I spent the evening with PCC's new president, Dr. Adrian Bennings, and was there with, so I attend kind of these quarterly elected official happy hours. So Captain Harrington was there, it was myself, it was at Representative Lisa Reynolds' house, and a couple board members from PCC were there. And so it was really wonderful to kind of learn about Dr. Benning's vision for PCC, some of the really interesting things coming down the pipeline, some of the issues and constraints and challenges that they're facing. There was so much that PCC offers that I had absolutely no idea about, and I just think I was really impressed. They do have a bond measure that's on that's going to be on the ballot, and I think the one thing that's important to know about the bond measure is the prior bond measure is expiring. This is kind of a rollout of a new one. However, it's not going to change the rate or any taxes, so it will almost be like just a kind of continuation. So they need those fundings, and I hope that passes. So the last thing that I did was I did the community academy at Tualatin Valley Fire Rescue. So I spent half the day training at the TVFR training center, and then I spent the night with Station 35. It was amazing. Very hard, and I have to say, the zombie house, we had a call to the zombie house at about 3:30 in the morning. I may or may not have said on the way over in the fire engine that they needed to just let it burn if it was on fire. But sadly, or not sadly, depending on how you look at it, it was not on fire and did not burn to the ground. But it was a great source of conversation, and Chief, I think some follow-up from them, because one of the things that it did highlight in kind of my discussion with them is how dangerous that property really is, especially for the first responders. And so we really need to get some movement. Courtney Neron and I are still trying to put some pressure on the landowners to just tear the building down.
It's on the market.
It is on the market. It is on the market. Is the RMLS listing photograph has been taken from the parking lot of Deer Creek with a hill, and so all you see is the building is the
rough line.
And that is it. It is blocked by the hill, which it is something, I guess. So anyway, I encourage anyone to go buy that property and tear it down. So so those are all the fun things that I got to do, and it was amazing. On a somewhat serious note, I want to highlight, Mike Weston over the last month was really personally attacked on our Facebook, next door. I mean, there's a little bit in there, but really on our Facebook page, personally attacked, and some really false and salacious things were said about him. And you might have seen the statement that went out, right? Like the beauty about the First Amendment is you get to have any opinion you want. You get to say whatever you want, except, right? You don't get to say false things. You don't get to damage someone's reputation, and you don't get to say, right? There are limits to the First Amendment, and I was my statement that I shared the statement on Nextdoor. It was removed because apparently it was believed that I was threatening people with sharing that statement. So I think candidly, unfortunately, I can't use Nextdoor anymore. But I will just reiterate this, the statement was in no way meant to try to stifle people's opinions or steer the conversation to go a different direction, right? Everyone has a right to their opinion. They have a right to share their opinion. They have a right to discuss their opinion, whether I agree with their opinion or not. I honor that. am a very huge supporter of the Constitution. It's kind of the thing I do during the day, right? But you don't get to lie and damage someone's reputation by spreading false information that you know is false, that you have been told is false. That simply is not okay. And there is recourse that can happen. And I think it is important that people understand that when they, there is a limit to what we will accept. And I will kind of leave it at that. So Mike, I just want to say personally that, right, I'm very sorry that you and your wife, your family had to go through this. I think it is unfortunate. And, you know, we thank you. I thank you. I thank all of you here. This is a very hard job, right? It's a difficult job. I don't think, you know, I don't want to sit here and try to garner sympathy for us and all of that because, right, I'm not really looking for that, but this is tough, right? We have impactful decisions to make. None of us take those decisions lightly. We all do this out of kind of a love for the city and because we want to do good in our community, and we all have very good intentions by what we do. And to be vilified and to be, right, for the most part, right, I think the meeting on the 11th was hard, but for the most part, people were strong in their opinions and their, you know, not opposition, but strong in their frustration and upset and, you know, in voicing their opinions. But for the most part, they were respectful. They refrained from personal attacks. There were some personal attacks, and I will say it was very disappointing how there was lots of cheers for when there was the vitriolic personal attacks. But, you know, I'm someone that I like decorum. So those things always bother me. I don't take them necessarily personally because these people don't know me. They don't know, right? They've never, you know, I've never had a conversation with a few of the people who, you know, think I'm an absolute idiot. And so, you know, but for everyone, I just want, that's a very long-winded way of saying, I really appreciate everyone who's here. I'm very sorry for what you've experienced for you and your family. And, you know, and I just thank you guys for all kind of digging in, you know, that's kind of it.
I felt like once everyone kind of got their shouting match over and everything else, and the room kind of quieted down, and we actually had some really good conversations.
Yeah, there was great, yeah.
That were there and some positive feedback on a couple elements that I think was beneficial. I think there's obviously a lot of emotion wrapped around, you know, nostalgia, the feel of their community, their neighborhood, and what they envision versus what the city's going to be in 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. And I think we all understand that. In our role, we have to balance there today and what's going to be there in 50 years and make sure that we're planning appropriately for, you know, unfortunately, that's not always what folks envision for today or what their vision of the future would be. So.
Well, and I think what's hard is, you know, we keep hearing, or I would say we, I would say I keep hearing, right? You're not listening, you're giving, right, like you're giving lip service, you're just going through motions, you're not listening, you're not, right? And I think it's difficult because we don't have a, you know, I think what people want is they want this to be over and they want a decision. And we aren't there yet. And right, and even like tonight, right, this forum of having people come to the podium and talk to us, but not being able to engage or ask questions or answer questions or, you know, really respond. I mean, it's just hard. So, and all I can say is we are listening. We do hear, right? There was, you know, for anyone that is questionable, right? It was very clear that the majority of the people who spoke on the 11th do not like either part of or the total of the plan. I mean, that it is just, there's no way around that, right? And I get it. And I empathize with the frustration. I just don't, I guess I don't know what else we can do to show or prove that we're listening, right? I mean, I have monthly mayor's meetings, right? People can set up coffee time. I mean, there's all these different ways, but, it just kind of, the process is frustrating in itself. So,
Robinson's here earlier, and he made a great statement. When he was talking, he's like, if you get rid of this one thing, 90% of the opposition goes away. And that one thing is kind of a critical component to the whole plan.
Right.
So I don't know, it is what it is, unfortunately, but there's a long process ahead of us still.
Yeah,
and
right.
Written in stone yet. Yeah.
So, I think it's literally, like, it probably took an hour, but it was a lot. It was a lot of, and I got a new job, just FYI. But there we are.
Oh.
It's now up to you.
I yield my time.
I think I already stole it, so thank you.
I don't have any updates. I do have a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Wait a second. All right.
Aye.
All those in favor of adjourning, Councilor Thompson and Otoli, raise your hand. All right.
Yeah,
All right. We are done. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you staying late.